Immortal Cultivation begins with time management. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyright or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 226 Expedition. Master Colin, at the time, he asked fellow Daoist Wei, "What's your name?" Then Wei Dongliu bowed and said, "I'm Wei Dongliu." Master Colin nodded, said, "I remember," and then lay down again. In the main hall of the temple, Long Xiaqi reported in a low voice. "Recall the scene carefully again, don't miss any details." A majestic female voice said. Xiao, the head of the Donghuangdo, looks like a mature woman in her 30s. She wears a green flowing Taoist robe, with black hair tied into a high bun on top of her head. She has a full forehead and is majestic without anger. There is a cinnamon mole between her eyebrows. If Wei Dongliu were here, he would definitely complain in his heart. Which TV version of Master Mage were you from? What expression did Colin have when he said this? Xiao frowned and asked carefully. No expression. Long Xiaqi replied. What tone? No tone. Long Xiaqi said, very calm. How calm? Xiao asked again and again to confirm. It's not that she was overly cautious. After all, Master Colin was an immortal. When it comes to matters related to him, no matter how cautious she is, it's not excessive. Just like my expression and tone now. Long Xiaqi said calmly. Xiao. Long Xiaqi. The two looked at each other for a moment, and finally Xiao broke the silence again, clearing her throat and said, "What is Wei Dongliu's background and personality?" Wei Dongliu was a cultivator of the mortal Dao. Long Xiaqi said softly, he founded his own sect, the Wanfei Tongshuan sect, and has a good relationship with fellow Daoist Jing as the heavenly demon Dao. He has also known fellow Daoist Win of the ghost Dao for a long time. Fellow Daoist Jing. Xiao pondered for a moment in her memory and asked, is it Jing Lin, who was born on a yin year, yin month, yin day and yin hour, and was found by the heavenly demon Dao more than 20 years ago? I don't know about that. Long Xiaqi said honestly, but her name is indeed Jing Lin. I think it should be the same person as the head of the sect said. How did Wen Yang know him? Xiao asked again. I don't know about that either. Long Xiaqi answered very straightforwardly. What is the relationship between them? Xiao asked. Long Xiaqi thought carefully for a while and said, fellow Daoist Jing seems to like fellow Daoist Wei. Has the heavenly demon sect already set its sights on Wei Dongliu? Xiao was silent for a while, waved her sleeves and said, you go down first and ask them if they're willing to join the expedition team. Yes. Long Xiaqi turned and left. As soon as she left, a person came out from the inner hall. She was slender, with eyes like autumn water, a face full of peach blossoms, and her gestures were full of charm. She was the Tu Shanjun that Ling Yunbo and Qiu Changtai had seen in the last demon-locking tower. At this time, she was no longer dressed as a male monk from Shushan, but was dressed in a peach-colored dress, charming and moving. I want to meet that Wei Dongliu. Tu Shanjun said with a smile. No. Xiao immediately refused, this plan is of great importance, you can't cause any more trouble. I know my limits. Tu Shanjun said coquettishly. You have no sense of propriety. Xiao was furious. I want to go back to the East Empire realm. You take me there. What will happen to this place if you go back? Tu Shanjun was not angry either. He just asked leisurely. Don't worry about it. Xiao did not want to say more. She said firmly, your mission is to pick up and drop off my people between the two realms. You are not allowed to interfere in anything else. You are so heartless. Tu Shanjun covered his mouth and laughed. If you continue to offend me like this, be careful that I will plot against you one day. You want to provoke a dispute between the two tribes? Xiao raised her eyebrows sharply, and her expression became fierce. Stop, 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 don't threaten me. Tu Shanjun sighed, I will take you there. She turned her eyes to the outside of the palace and sighed faintly. Wei Dongliu meditated in the guest room for a while, then raised his hand to release the golden silkworm Gu. 3 golden silkworm Gu flew in the air, buzzing and chirping, and seemed very happy. Theoretically, as long as the 100 poison gold and silkworm Gu matures and there are male and female pairs at the same time, it can start to reproduce. But how to make them reproduce? Wei Dongliu has no idea about this. After thinking about it, it is probably only the Donghuangdo that may have information in this regard. After all, it has taken over the legacy of the beast taming Dao. Although Long Xiaoqi doesn't seem to care, it doesn't mean that the Donghuan Duo has no covetousness for the 100 poison gold and silkworm Gu. Thinking of this, Wei Dongliu got up leisurely and prepared to go out to find Long Xiaoqi to test it. As soon as he went out, he saw Jing Monu on the corridor outside, looking out from the railing with Long Xiaoqi and chatting casually. The Donghuan Palace was built on the top of Yulong Snow Mountain. Looking out from the railing of this corridor, going down the mountain is ice and snow, meadows, lush coniferous forests, and the distant Shouwan Mountains, tropical rainforests and tohomiasma, all kinds of scenery are in sight. In the 10,000 mountains, the most terrifying thing is not the monsters. Long Xiaoqi said in a low voice, but the ruins. Ruins? Jianglin asked curiously, isn't that a fortuitous encounter? It's a fortuitous encounter if you get out alive. Long Xiaoqi said, if you die in there, it's not a fortuitous encounter, but a murderous intent. Indeed. Wei Dongliu naturally joined the topic, and the 10,000 mountains were once an ancient battlefield between humans and monsters. The ruins in it are not just immortal residences, but some are pure war traps. If you accidentally enter it, even if you don't die, you will be skinned alive, and don't even think about the benefits. Really? Jianglin seemed to be thinking about something, but the interest in his eyes did not diminish at all, and smiled. Xiaoqi is a local, he must be very familiar with the terrain around here. Where are the ruins and where are the traps? She should know them all. Doi Jiang. Wei Dongliu said with a smile, all the outer areas that she knows so well must have been explored long ago, how can there be a place for us? That's right. Long Xiaoqi nodded and said, every year during the period when the miasma dissipates, the exploration team must enter the Shouwan Mountains, focusing on exploring those areas that have never been visited. In addition, there are many ancient ruins that we have never explored before, but after we entered, they have been looted. I think the people from Shushan got there first. So in addition to the exploration team, we need to form a hunting team every day to protect the exploration team from being killed by Shushan, or to kill the Shushan swordsmen whose locations have been confirmed, so as not to be endangered by the other party's exploration operations. Kill the other party? Wei Dongliu laughed dumbly. Don't think I don't know that you are suppressed and killed by Shushan every year. How can you have the strength to kill the other party? Jianglin was obviously aware of this matter, but he did not expose Long Xiaoqi's whitewashing. He smiled and said, with the 5 sects joining forces this time, I think the Shushan Roughman is alone and can't do anything. There is no need to worry. Yes. Long Xiaoqi nodded. According to the original agreement between the 5 sects, the hunting team must be drawn from the 5 sects in turn. On average, each person will have to take on the responsibility of hunting for 1 day for every 2 days of exploration. But I have talked to the head of the sect, well, fellow Daoist Wei, fellow Daoist Jiang, fellow Daoist Win and fellow Daoist Gu are all powerful people in the foundation building realm, so they can choose not to participate in the hunting, but join the expedition team. Expedition team? Wei Dongliu asked curiously. It is to go deep into the 10,000 mountains, close to the East Empire Realm Gate. Long Xiaoqi explained, it is extremely dangerous there, even Jindan cultivators often fall there, only the strongest disciples in the foundation building realm can follow that Jindan seniors to go deep into it. Wei Dongliu and Jianglin looked at each other for a moment. The former remained calm and calculated silently in his heart. The latter smiled, his eyes full of eagerness. Chapter 227. Fellow Daoist Wei can see the big picture from the small details. Traditional cultivation novels are like games, and the enemy's numerical growth is also an important part. For example, if the protagonist is at the Shixi level, then most of the enemies he encounters must be at the Watful level 1 level above, so that the protagonist can just try his best to cross the level and win the battle. After all, if the enemy is at the Jindan level, the protagonist can only run away. If it is at the higher level of the Yunning level, there is no chance to run away, and the novel can end early. But reality is not a novel after all, and the place you want to go cannot have a sign saying no entry for high-level cultivators. In most cases, it depends on whether this place is worth getting high-level cultivators involved. If so, low-level cultivators can only leave it to fate and pray that they don't run into high-level enemies. Shouwan Dashan is such a place. There are many benefits that make Yunning-level cultivators excited. There are also many relics that even Watful-level cultivators have the opportunity to fully explore. Therefore, every year when the miasma dissipates, a large number of cultivators will enter the Shouwan Mountains. There are many monks from Shushan, Donghuang, and even independent cultivators. In short, there are all kinds of people, and anything can happen. If cultivators of the same level meet, they will often avoid each other after careful probing. After all, fighting is not good for both sides. Once the realm gap is too large, it will almost inevitably lead to a one-sided massacre. It doesn't matter if the outer disciples die, but if they're elite seeds in the sect, they certainly can't be ruined by bad luck. Therefore, the so-called expedition team is not so much about bravely entering a high-risk area, but it is better to say that high-level cultivators are protecting and training throughout the process. After listening to Jian Glean's explanation, Wei Dongliu finally understood. Alas, this character does not have the characteristics of hearing 1,000 enlightenments, which is really a bit unaccustomed. As for the answer, of course, he will not join. Although it is very nice to be trained by a big brother, what about the synchronization value of my mysterious personality? I'm keeping it a secret here. Jian Gmonu just became curious, and the big brother said that's it. Didn't my mysterious personality collapse on the spot? That's great, but I, Wei, won't participate. Wei Dongliu said lightly, I'm sorry, Doyist Jiang, if you want to join the expedition, we can separate now. Jian Glean. For the first time, she couldn't hold back her expression and showed an inexplicable look of surprise. No, the seniors of the sect will train you throughout the whole process, so you don't have to worry about being ambushed by the high-level monks of Shushan, and you can explore the ruins with confidence. What are you thinking, old thief Wei? You gave up such a good opportunity voluntarily. Did your mind get eaten by the inner demon? Doyist Wei. She carefully considered her words and said, whether we join forces this time or not is naturally up to everyone's willingness, and we won't force it. But, I'm a little curious, can you tell me the reason? Wei Dongliu smiled lightly and said, it's not convenient to tell you, sorry. Jian Glean. She immediately became annoyed. This is simply nonsense. Instead of being protected by a good high-level cultivator, he chose to explore alone. I can't think of any reasonable reason for doing this except for showing off. Wait. After all, Jian Gmonu was also a person with a quick mind. Suddenly, an idea popped up in her mind. Could it be, among the seniors of the sect who led the team this time, there is an old acquaintance that Wei Laozhe doesn't want to meet? Thinking about it this way, it seems very likely. She has long suspected that Wei Dongliu is hiding his strength, but she doesn't know his true realm and dare not test him directly. Although there is no conclusive evidence, you have to know that even the Kalin at the gate of the Donghuan Palace has rarely shown interest in Wei Dongliu. Who would believe that he is a low-level cultivator who has not yet formed a pill? Thinking of this, Jian Glean had another secret inspiration in his heart. Could there be a very old soul living in Wei Dongliu's seemingly young body? An ancient soul in the nascent soul realm, or even in the immortal realm? There was no clue to this guess, but it just suddenly came from the bottom of my heart, as if it was a wonderful inspiration that appeared out of thin air. However, Jian Gmoenv is a person who believes in intuition very much. After all, intuition has saved her from danger many times. For example, last time in the Islands, she escaped the sudden attack of a monk from Yu King Temple with a sudden bad premonition. If the intuition can also come true this time, then Wei Dongliu's body is living in an old monster who has taken over the body. Wei Dongliu didn't know what his identity was, and he had been imagined by Jian Glean. He just found that the synchronization value of the mysterious personality had skyrocketed, and immediately said to Kumlinjing excitedly, Jin, look, I have long said that you're prejudiced against Jian Gnoya. Look, isn't this girl also very cute? Very good. Kumlinjing didn't want to pay attention to him, and said casually, if you want to have a deep friendship with this female devil, I can only say that you are happy. Jin, stop being sour, I just want to synchronize the personality, don't be too jealous. Wei Dongliu said proudly. Kumlin mirror. Then what are you going to do? She asked, changing the subject. If you don't join the expedition, you can only explore and hunt. That's the only way. Wei Dongliu sighed, as long as I don't meet high-level sword immortals and old acquaintances, I can deal with other Shushan disciples. In that case. Jian Glean finally thought it over and smiled again, let's go and discuss it with fellow Daoist Wen and Gu. Wei Dongliu raised his eyebrows in surprise. He had said it so resolutely, but which Jian didn't give up directly. Was she trying to keep him touched? What do you think, Xiaoqi? Jian Glean turned around and asked. I'm fine with it. Long Xiaoqi said leisurely. Anyway, the head of the sect just asked him if he was willing, and he didn't have to ask him to join the expedition. Well, let's go find that two Daoists and discuss it together. Jian Glean clapped his hands and laughed. Since they were all brought in by Long Xiaoqi, the guest room where Wen Yang and Gilai lived was not far away, and they were soon called out. Not joining the expedition. Wen Yang also showed the same surprised look. Why is that, Brother Wei? Can you explain it? No need for Brother Wei to explain, I'll tell you. Gilai sneered, is it the idea of the elders of the sect or your sect's master Shi to join the expedition? Of course it's the idea of the head of the sect. Long Xiaoqi said calmly. The reason why Master Shi proposed this is because the fairy beast Kalin in front of the palace gave talk to Brother Wei, right? Gilai continued to sneer. Long Xiaoqi didn't answer, but just shook his head slowly. It was unclear whether it meant no, I don't know, or it's inconvenient to say. If it is the elders of the sect who asked you to join the expedition, then of course you can go. Gilai did not mention the matter of Kalin, but just said coldly, but if it is Master Shi's intention, then it is not that the elders of the sect value you, but just giving Master Shi face. Although this is the case, what will your fellow brothers and sisters think after the news is passed back to the sect? They will not know that it is Master Shi's face that is at work. They will only think that you are valued by the elders of the sect in an exceptional way, and thus become wary and hostile to us. After a period of time, they will find that the elders do not really value us so much, and then they will suspect that we have fallen out of favor. In this case, do you think most of them will dispel their fear of us, or try to beat the fallen dog to see if they can squeeze out the benefits given by the elders of the sect from us? Of course it is the latter. Wen Yang also laughed grimly. Friend Wei can see the big picture from the small details, and Friend Yu understands the human nature. It really opened my eyes. I'm grateful for your advice. Of course it's best to pick up a bargain of this one. Gilai concluded, but if you pick up a bargain in public and don't have enough strength to dispel the ensuing covetousness, you have to carefully consider whether it's worth it. I see. Jianglin sighed. In this case, you really can't join the expedition team, but it's a pity that a tall tree attracts the wind. I'm not as clear-sighted as fellow Daoist Wei. Thank you fellow Daoist Gi for clearing up my doubts. Wei Dongliu smiled on his face, but said nothing, and laughed awkwardly in his heart. What are you imagining? Chapter 228 Don't seek your own death. Long Xiaoqi did not object to the decision of not joining the expedition. She just wanted to report the decision to the headmaster after the meeting, but she found out that the headmaster had gone out to do something. Standing outside the main hall, Long Xiaoqi thought carefully for a long time. Forget it, it's too troublesome. Never mind. She slowly returned to the guest room area, but saw Wei Dongliu leaning on the railing in the corridor and looking into the distance, as if waiting for her. Fellow Daoist Long. He turned around and said with a bow. Just call me Xiaoqi. Long Xiaoqi said softly, that's what Sister Li calls me. Sister Li. Wei Dongliu turned his mind and realized that she was referring to Jianglin. Perhaps Jianglin and Long Xiaoqi had a close relationship, so the two of them would have another name in private. Now that Long Xiaoqi noticed the attitude of which Jiang towards Wei Dongliu, he planned to pull him into this private circle. Xiaoqi, it's still a while before the 10,000 mountains are open. I'm bored living alone in the guest room. Can I find some books here? Wei Dongliu asked with a tentative smile. Sure. Long Xiaoqi answered without any ulterior motives, we have a sutra pavilion. Visitors are allowed to enter the outer area. I can take you there. Wei Dongliu was overjoyed. He originally thought that he could only ask Long Xiaoqi to borrow it, but he didn't expect that he would be allowed to go in and find books. This Donghuangdo is indeed a miscellaneous sect among the 6 parts of the demon cult. The management system is so loose. Congratulations. Long Xiaoqi took Wei Dongliu to the Sutra Pavilion, only to see that the huge attic was empty, without a single person. Even the Shushan Sword Immortal, who didn't like reading the most, had 1 or 2 people in the Sutra Pavilion. It can only be said that demons may not like to be a test taker. You can't go into the inner room inside. Long Xiaoqi pointed him out, you can read the books outside, but you can't take them away. I know. Wei Dongliu said sincerely, thank you, Miss Xiaoqi. You're welcome. Long Xiaoqi lowered her head, seeming a little embarrassed. I'll go first, you know the way here, right? Of course I do. Yes. Long Xiaoqi turned around and left, while Wei Dongliu strolled in the Sutra library, searching for books carefully. The characteristics of the Sutra library in the later period of Jirizhou have been clearly differentiated from those of Changzhou. The most typical one is technique is more important than law, placing more powerful and faster Taoist books in the outer reach. As for the profound and difficult Taoist methods that require a long time to practice, they are basically left in the deep corners and no one cares about them. Wei Dongliu probably guessed that this was also due to the defeat of Jiri Zhao after the Jiri War, which led to the monks having a strong sense of crisis and placing saving their lives in a more important position. When it comes to quickly improving combat power, the simplest and most effective way is to use external objects. Judging from the books in this suitor library, 3 schools had already developed in the late Jiri Zhao period, namely serving the heavenly demon, serving the in-ghost and serving the demonic beast, which just corresponded to the later heavenly demon duo, the in-ghost duo and the beast-taming duo. According to this classification, Wei Dongliu quickly found a book collection area for servitude of demonic beasts. As for the demonic beasts, according to the records of the Jiri Zhao monks, there are 5 types of only half. Only half refers to flying birds, refers to walking beasts, refers to fish and amphibians, refers to mollusks with smooth body surface, and refers to insects with shells. After searching for a long time in that category, Wei Dongliu found many books related to the 100 Poisons Gold and Silkworm Gu. Unfortunately, most of the records are praising how powerful the 100 Poisons Gold and Silkworm Gu is, while there are very few books discussing its cultivation, feeding and servitude. Even if there are, they are only mentioned in a few words, which is similar to the books in the Tiangong workshop. Wei Dongliu suddenly had a bad feeling. Could it be that the method of using the 100 Poisons Gold and Silkworm Gu was originally passed down orally from master to disciple in Jiri Zhao, without any written records? That would be bad. Now that Jiri Zhao has been destroyed and the way of taming beasts has also declined, where can I find someone to ask? Are you looking for this book? A voice suddenly came from the side. Wei Dongliu turned his head and saw Tu Shanjun standing opposite the bookshelf with a smile, handing him a jade slip. Oh my goodness, it turned out to be the big demon I saw last time. I didn't recognize it at first glance after it changed into women's clothes. After taking the jade slip and scanning it with his spiritual sense, Wei Dongliu was happy in his heart, but his face was calm and said, "Yes, thank you, senior." "Why don't you want to join the expedition team?" Tu Shanjun asked. "Who is the senior?" Wei Dongliu asked instead of answering. "The guest elder of Dong Huangdo, Li." Li, a fox. Wei Dongliu pretended to be unaware and said, "Senior, a tree that stands out in the forest will be destroyed by the wind. They have forests, but you don't." Tu Shanjun, the female cultivator who has now changed her name to Li, said with a smile, "The mortal doe is originally a loose sand. Who are you afraid of? It's always better to be careful." Wei Dongliu said perfunctorily. Of course, he couldn't tell the other party, because he had so many secrets. Even if it was the existence of the 10,000 Ghosts evil sword, once it was exposed, the in-ghost duo would come to kill directly, and they wouldn't care whether you were from the mortal duo or not. Too careful, and it's meaningless. Billy smiled with her mouth covered, and suddenly asked, "How do you know Colin?" "I don't know." Wei Dongliu was not stumped by her sudden attack, but answered calmly, "This is the first time that Senior Colin and I have met. It won't pay attention to the name of an unknown person casually." Billy's smile was meaningful. "Senior, why don't you ask it directly?" Wei Dongliu responded directly. "If it was willing to pay attention to me, I would have asked it long ago." Billy waved her hand indifferently and turned to leave. Really not planning to join the expedition. She suddenly turned back and said, "I'm also in the team, I can take care of you." "Thank you for your concern, senior." Wei Dongliu said with a go, "I have nothing to repay you." Nothing to repay means that I dare not accept it, so Willie finally chuckled and left gracefully. Wei Dongliu watched the other party leave, and only thought about it with a serious expression until she walked away. How could the Ta Shanjun appear here? Since she claimed to be a guest elder of Dong Huangdo, the rumor that Dong Huangdo was infiltrated by demons can almost be confirmed. From the perspective of demons, the importance of weakening Shushan is definitely far greater than weakening the magic path, so the expedition team is unlikely to be a trap. But even so, Wei Dongliu didn't want to deal with a group of demon bosses. "Isn't Jingmanu, who can help me brush the synchronization value, cute?" After recording the contents of the jade slip in his hand with the Kunlun mirror, Wei Dongliu left contentedly. When he reached the door of his room, he suddenly heard a scream from the other end of the corridor. It seemed to be the voice of Witch Jiang. He went over to take a look and saw Jiang falling to the ground, covering her cheek, tears in her eyes, with a red slat mark on her face. The one who slapped her just now was an unfamiliar female cultivator with upside-down triangular eyes and sunken cheekbones. Judging from her face, she was a mean and vicious character. The heavenly demon sect is handling the private affairs of its disciples. Seeing that Wei Dongliu was about to approach, the other party immediately glared at him and shouted coldly, "Stay away. Don't seek your own death." Chapter 229. Which Jing failed terribly, but not completely. Jinglin fell to the ground, sobbing, tears flowing down uncontrollably, but Jinning's eyes secretly glanced at Wei Dongliu. Then, she saw a very complicated expression on Wei Dongliu's face. It was an expression that seemed to be smiling, but also a bit funny. Jingwich's heart skipped a beat, and a great crisis suddenly arose in her heart. With the inspiration that followed, she immediately got up from the ground, hid behind Wei Dongliu, and shouted anxiously, "Be careful. That's my senior sister Aizkinzi, a master of the Watfu level." This sentence was almost perfect, and immediately made Aizkinzi regard Wei Dongliu as an enemy, especially when he let Jinglin hide behind him, without any subconscious evasion, and without showing any surprise, which further proved this point. Aizkinzi clenched the 5 fingers of his right hand, and countless demons roared out and rushed towards Wei Dongliu from all directions. As the eldest sister at the Heavenly Demon Sect, the 36 gods and demons she raised were much more powerful than the ones Luoyang had dealt with last time in the Wazit Islands. Each demon was 8 feet tall, with a green face and fangs, and was extremely powerful. He could tear a person alive with a chop, and could also withstand the attack of a flying sword head-on. It can be said that he had almost no disadvantages against the cultivators below the Golden Core stage. The reason why the word almost was used was because these demons were sturdy and huge. If they encountered Taoist methods and magic weapons that specifically restrained demons, they would be difficult to escape because they were easily hit. Wei Dongliu had a blank expression on his face, and the cloth strips behind him dissipated without wind, revealing a purple-black evil sword that popped out from behind him. After being infused with the demonic energy of the Chaos Demon body, the Wangyi Shi Jing sword had become extremely docile to him, and was comparable to his own sword. As his mind moved slightly, the Wangyi Shi Jing sword suddenly swung the sword body horizontally, and with a sweep, it cut open the first 3 gods and demons that approached him. Although the 36 gods and demons, when practiced to a high level, are all invulnerable to swords and guns, and are invulnerable to water and fire. However, under the attack of the 10,000 Ghosts' evil sword, their sturdy bodies were torn apart as if made of paper, and a large amount of black lead dissipated from them. Seeing this, Aizkin's pupils shrank suddenly, and his heart was alarmed. He immediately realized that he had been tricked. There are not many means to restrain the 36 gods and demons. How could the other party just have one of them? Rather than saying that he was unlucky, it is almost certain that it was Jing Shijiri who had leaked his information a long time ago and specially invited this opponent to restrain him. Thinking of Jinglin's previous words and expressions, the seemingly normal but deliberately provoking her style and tone, Aizkinzi suddenly pulled away from her anger and returned to her cold rationality. Being deliberately plotted against by someone, it is already a big disadvantage at this time, and you can't stay for long. You have to escape. She gritted her teeth and formed a spell with her hands. The 3 demon heads that were almost cut in half suddenly swelled up like balloons. Explosion. Thick black smoke filled the surrounding space like fog. This substance that constitutes the 36 gods and demons is the most superficial human emotion, which is a mixture of pure joy, anger, worry, thought, sadness, fear, and shock. If ordinary cultivators were exposed to even a little bit of it, they would immediately lose their Taoism and fall into crazy crying, laughing, or other strange and grotesque states of madness. But Wei Dongliu was not an ordinary person. He just flicked his sword finger, and the 10,000 Ghosts' evil sword vibrated again. The Taoist method soul-stealing thorn on the sword was activated. In an instant, it was like a whale swallowing a dragon, eating up all the emotional black smoke around. Jinglin got out from behind him, staring at the empty front in amazement, with an expression of disbelief on his face. "Where is the eldest sister? Where is my big senior sister? She ran away. Why did you let her escape? Where is your gold and silkworm poison? Use the same trick you used against Gilai last time. Just hug her face and kill her." Jingmunu felt mixed emotions at this time, and she wanted to scream like a groundhog standing upright, but she was also a woman of the demon sect who had been tested for a long time. She immediately forced herself to suppress her unwillingness, with 3 parts of gratitude and 7 parts of sorrow on her face. She bowed and thanked him and said, "Thank you for your help, Brother Wei. No need to be polite." Wei Dongliu said lightly with his hands behind his back, "She took the initiative to attack, and I just took action to protect myself. Saving you is just a byproduct." Jinglin was about to cry, and she had already accumulated 10,000 dirty words in her heart. who found the sect's residence for you, who familiarized you with the surrounding areas of Mount Watai, introduced you to many connections such as Wen Yang, and helped you answer questions for your disciples. Is this how you treat me, Wei Lao Mo? You don't even want to help me kill a senior sister. That's your senior sister, right? Wei Dongliu asked doubtfully. Why did she hit you? Jianglin smiled miserably, covered his cheek, and said sadly, in the demon sect, it's nothing but the strong preying on the weak. Alas, the weak are beaten. What's the reason? Oh. Wei Dongliu sighed and continued to ask, is Troy Jiang okay? I'm fine. Jianglin stood up in embarrassment, with a slap mark on his face. To be honest, even if you are not a cultivator, most slaps are more insulting than harmful. In addition, Jianglin deliberately took this blow to strengthen the persuasiveness of her being bullied by her senior sister, but Wei Dongliu actually let her run away. Thinking of this, she couldn't help but grind her teeth, wishing she could bite Wei Dongliu off in one bite to relieve her anger. However, it's not that it can't be remedied. Based on her understanding of Awai's Hinzi, she was able to escape only after she blew up 3 gods and demons. At this time, the senior sister's heart was probably bleeding. Having suffered such a big loss, the eldest sister is determined not to give up. She will definitely think that Wei Dongliu is a helper she invited, who was specifically designed to kill her here. Therefore, from the perspective of revenge, the eldest sister will most likely organize more people, and after entering the Shouwang Mountains, she will wait for an opportunity to find the whereabouts of her group. This is not only to relieve the hatred in her heart, but also to completely eliminate future troubles. As long as the two are not dead, the eldest sister will definitely not be able to sleep or eat well. By then, after being attacked twice in a row, even if Wei Lao Mo is cautious, he will not let the tiger go back to the mountain. Humph, there are plenty of opportunities anyway. Thinking of this, Jiang Monu quickly became more cheerful. She put on a guilty and self-blaming expression and sighed to Wei Dongliu. Alas, it's my fault. It's obviously a personal grudge between me and my senior sister, but I dragged you, doist fellow Wei, into this. Wei Dongliu saw that her acting was realistic and flawless, so he naturally cooperated and said, it's not doist fellow Jiang's fault. I just came to take a look, and your senior sister took the initiative to attack me. If you really want to blame someone, it's her fault. Jianglin was comforted by him, so he took the opportunity to ease his expression and smiled bigly. Doist fellow Wei, you offended my senior sister this time, and let her escape successfully. I'm afraid that she will ambush and retaliate when you went to the 10,000 mountains later. Then let her come. Wei Dongliu didn't care. After seeing doist fellow Wei's strength, she will definitely go to find powerful helpers. Jianglin reminded. It doesn't matter how many come. Wei Dongliu said lightly, without any fear. As long as you are below the Jindan level, no matter how many of you come, I will just kill you with the 100 poisons gold and silkworm Gu, the 5 elements extinction divine light, and the 5 thunders righteous law. Why worry about not being able to destroy you? Even if you were a Jindan cultivator, if you really can't beat him, at least there is our Jin who can help you escape. Jianglin didn't know so much, but seeing Wei Dongliu so confident, he couldn't help but mutter in his heart again. Chapter 230 Calculation and Seeing Through. Back in the room, Jianglin took out the medicine from the pill bottle and carefully applied it on her face, and soon the red palm marks disappeared. Looking at the pretty face in the bronze mirror, she slowly revealed a sweet smile that was extremely charming, seductive and alluring. The beauty remains. Unlike the silly Mishi, Jiang which has a very deep understanding of her beauty and temperament. It is not an exaggeration to describe her as a rose watered by venom. However, why didn't he fall for it? Thinking of her long-planned calculations, Jianglin couldn't help but feel discouraged. Senior sister Aizhinzi has a bad temper and will never allow any form of rebellion, so the junior sisters have to be humble in front of her to avoid her punishment and revenge. Jiangwich's cognition is more profound. She knows that all the tyranny shown by the senior sister actually comes from the fear deep in her heart. Just like a dog barking at a black bear, it is fierce on the outside but weak on the inside. As for the source of fear, actually, like other sisters, it comes from the common amiable master. The fairy of colored moth is the most moody among the elders of the heavenly demon sect. Whenever she recruits disciples, she will choose young and cute girls. Whenever she summons demons, she almost always uses disciples as sacrifices. As for the criteria for selecting sacrifices, all the sisters who have lived to this day have basically figured out the master's habits. Stupid minds, low strength, and those who are not pleasing to the eye. Since the heavenly demon is a consumable, especially when fighting against a strong enemy, refer to Aizin's fight against Wei Dongliu, he had to detonate 3 demons to escape. Therefore, when practicing Taoism under the Fairy of Colored Moth, you can neither be too high profile nor too low profile. If you are too high profile, you will be noticed by the Fairy of Colored Moth, and then one day when she is in a bad mood and dislikes you, she will directly capture you as a sacrifice for the heavenly demon. If you are too low-key, you will be looked down upon and ignored by the Fairy of Colored Moth. Then one day when she is in a good mood, she will count the disciples and finally choose you as the sacrifice of the demon. It is very difficult to grasp the degree here. I don't know how many sisters have fallen into this trap, and died with hatred. But Jianglin has lived to this day, so he naturally understands the character of the Fairy of Colored Moth. The reason why she treats her disciples like cattle and sheep is because in her mind, only disciples who have formed a golden elixir can be regarded as a cultivator of the heavenly demon. As for those who have not formed an elixir, whether it is refining key, washing marrow or transforming palace, they are no different from mortals in her eyes. And for the demon cult, mortals are just materials for casting spells. Now Jianglin is the youngest and weakest one under the Fairy of Colored Moth. Those sisters who entered the sect later than her have basically been caught and killed by the master. Before there are new people, if the master wants to refine a new demon, he will most likely be chosen. Fortunately, more than 10 years ago, master lost a battle with a Shushan swordsman, and returned in a mess. He caught the second sister as a sacrifice. Now he is in retreat at the Tianmo headquarters in Japan mounting Yangzhou to sacrifice the demon head, but he has not yet finished refining it. Before master comes out of retreat, he must kill a few more sisters. In this way, when master comes out of retreat, he will find that there are so few disciples in the foundation building realm, and he will recruit a group of new disciples to remove himself from the weakest position. As for why he wanted to start with Aizinzi, the reason is actually very simple. She is too capable. She has been stationed in the Behind Palace branch of Shipping Mountain for many years, and has managed many matters in an orderly manner, so that master feels that she can do the work of several people alone, so he is not so eager to accept disciples. Since Aizinzi became the eldest sister, the frequency of masters accepting disciples has greatly decreased, so that now the disciples of the marrow washing and refining stages have completely stopped, and Jianglin of the Wafu stage has become a little sister, which shows that this eldest sister is really harmful. Which Jiang had already made a plan. As long as Aizinzi died, the position of the eldest sister would be vacant, and the other sisters would immediately start fighting. When the master came out of retreat, he would find that not only the eldest sister Aizinzi had already died, but also many other Wafu-level disciples had died. In this way, recruiting new disciples became an urgent matter. After all, we can't let the Jindan disciples do the work of the foundation building disciples. Getting rid of the high-risk title of Little Sister is the first step in the plan. The second step is to get rid of the remaining sisters, take the position of the eldest sister, and then show a stronger ability to work than Aizinzi, so that the master can use it smoothly and at ease. In this way, there is at least a certainty that it can last until the Jindan. Jianglin held his chin with both hands, looking at the reflection of the beauty in the bronze mirror, and once again showed an innocent, sweet, but also a hint of vicious exquisite smile. He has both brains and skills, and also has a fierce and decisive personality. The only thing he lacks is the foundation. Although Wei Lazi was very secretive and concealed his strength, which made her suffer many setbacks, she was not afraid of him. On the contrary, she actually hoped that Wei Lazi would be as strong as possible. After all, compared with other senior sisters, she had too few cards to play. If she did nothing, she would almost certainly die in the future. Aizinzi had been angered by herself and had a lot of hatred towards Wei Dongliu. Next, she would definitely find ways to find out his details. Since Wei Dongliu was invited by the Eastern Emperor, Aizinzi would definitely ask the familiar Eastern Emperor of the monks. What she had to do was to use Long Xiaqi's mouth to pass on the news that she wanted to let the senior sister know to her ears just right. After going over the plan in her mind again, Jianglin stood up and prepared to go out and meet up with everyone. When she came to the door, she smiled first, then rubbed her face with both hands, and then turned into a weak and haggard smile, and then reached out to open the door. In the corridor outside, everyone had gathered by the railing and were chatting casually. Gilai was telling dirty jokes to Wen Yang, and Wen Yang laughed knowingly, using a rough and hoarse male voice to completely destroy his beautiful appearance like a woman. Long Xiaqi held the railing with both hands, staring outside without blinking, as if he would fall asleep at any time. Wei Dongliu stood with his hands behind his back, listening quietly. When he saw Jiangling coming out of the guest room, he nodded to her as a greeting. After the 5 people gathered, they planned to go out to the foreign market of Don Juan Road to buy the supplies needed for in-depth exploration of the 10,000 mountains. Fellow Daoist Jing seems to be in a bad mood. When Yang suddenly asked on the way. It's okay, I just got distracted while practicing. Jiangling shook his head and smiled reluctantly. Such a haggard and numb smile would make any man feel distressed and pity, and Wei Dongliu was no exception. The reason why he did not show concern for Jiangling was because there was a voice in his head that had been saying bad things about him since just now. Humph. Look at her acting, it's clearly I suffered, but I don't want to say it. Will anyone really be fooled by such a contrived performance? Jing, please stop being sour. Wei Dongliu frowned and said, even if she was acting on purpose before, at least she was slapped hard. It's normal for her face to look a little haggard. No way. You won't really fall for it. Kumlin Jing shouted in disbelief, how can a cultivator be hurt by a slap in the face? Not to mention this demon. Chapter 231 Night, Sword Chant. Wei Dongliu was meditating in the room. He was not unaware of Jing Munu's thoughts. Even if he didn't know at first, he couldn't stand Jing's live explanation in his ears, just like watching a magician's performance on stage, and his girlfriend next to him kept saying this technique is actually like this and that mechanism is hidden there blah blah. Every time Wei Dongliu saw Jing Munu's performance, he felt he couldn't help laughing and crying, and was particularly out of the play, although her acting skills were indeed fine. Go back to Shushan, Jing. He closed his eyes and ordered. Point 2. Shushan Shang King Sect, King Luo Peak. Character Identity. Ling Yunpo. Mirror Flower Water Moon Templar Covered, traveling through time and space. Ling Yunpo put on his clothes and left the Taoist temple, only to see that the yellow leaves on the trees outside the temple had fallen, leaving only bare branches. People who practice Taoism have special physiques and don't feel cold or heat, but when they see everything bleak, they know that winter is coming. What are you looking at? Zisu came from behind. Today, senior sister Anne, rarely seen, dressed up as a nun, with her long black hair tied up in a crown. She looked 3 points less gentle than usual, but 7 points more heroic. How can one describe this temperament with just one word? Sassy. Just looking at the scenery. Ling Yunpo said truthfully. I'm going to Yangzhou for a trip. Zisu hesitated, do you want to come with me? Yangzhou? Ling Yunpo thought, if I remember correctly, senior sister is from Guangling County, Yangzhou? Yes. Zisu felt a little warm in his heart, thinking that he had only told him once, and junior brother actually remembered where his hometown was. He was really thoughtful. Every 10 years, I have to go back to my hometown to worship my deceased mother. She rolled up her hair by her ears and said softly, I suddenly thought that junior brother has been in Shushan for so long, but has not gone out to experience, so I wondered if he would like to go out with me. Senior sister is interested, junior brother dare not disobey. Ling Yunpo could tell what she was thinking. It was nothing more than taking her to meet her parents. It's just that senior sister is too shy to say it. That's good. Zisu breathed a sigh of relief and said with a smile, pack up and follow me. Ling Yunpo turned and walked into the temple and returned to his room. Well, there's nothing good to bring. Ling Yunpo's character doesn't have too many Taoist magics and talismans to carry with him. After all, as a sword immortal in Shushan, he only relies on the sword in his hand. Kingping's sword is his natal sword, and he doesn't need to carry it with him. Therefore, he just carried the sword box containing the thunder sword and went out. If a cultivator flies long distances, he often prefers flying magic tools rather than flying swords, but King Luo Peak has limited financial resources and can't afford magic tools, so the two flew along the Yangtze River. The wind blew in his face, making it almost impossible to open his eyes, but Ling Yunpo had to play a resolute and unyielding character. Even if his eyes were blown dry, he could only rely on his marrow-washing physique to stand firm. It was already dusk when he arrived at Guangling County. The two landed outside Jiangkang City, then walked into the city and found an inn to rest. Ling Yunpo shamelessly suggested that in order to save money, they could only book one room, and then he was defeated in the surprised eyes of Zisu. His senior sister, you can say that she has a complicated mind, but in many ways she is unexpectedly innocent. You can say that she is simple and naive, but you see, she actually knows everything. She can neither be provoked like she did with Zhu Yinlian, nor can she be deceived like she did with Xie Luli, nor can she be seduced like she did with Jianglin. She is indeed the most difficult to deal with among all people. Forget it, go to sleep. Back in his room, sitting cross-legged on the bed, Ling Yunpo suddenly remembered something. By the way, Qiu Changtian has a thunder method. I remember that I have to go to Yangzhou Qiuju County to find it. How about looking for it this time? He was thinking about the idea in his mind, and gradually fell into a state of meditation and dozed off. I don't know how long it took, but suddenly I heard a sharp sound from above my head. It's the sword chant. Ling Yunpo had been a swordsman in Shushan for more than 10 years. How could he not hear the sound of the flying sword being pushed to the extreme and cutting through the air? Someone was fighting in the air. He jumped off the bed and rushed out of the room. He just happened to see Nzisu coming out of the room with the Feian sword in her hand. Ling Yunpo winked, meaning there is a fight outside. Nzisu pointed the sword outward, meaning let's talk about it outside. Someone was fighting outside. The two of them didn't know what the situation was if they stayed indoors. If the building they were in was affected by the aftermath of the Taoism, it would be difficult to deal with it, so they had to leave as soon as possible. After leaving the inn in a hurry, Ling Yunpo immediately flew up on his sword and quickly scanned the surroundings. Northwest direction, 30 feet. Nzisu reminded. Ling Yunpo looked intently and saw a man flying over the eaves with a sword and rising rapidly from the ground. Junior brother Guan. Guanzhen flew into the air with his sword, but before he flew very high, another sword-like flew out from behind and chopped him down fiercely from behind. To be exact, it was knocked down, and the other party used the spine of the sword. Nzisu sighed. Ling Yunpo frowned and continued to look, and saw Guanzhen flying up from below, catching Guanzhen, who lost his balance and fell with one hand, and then slowly flew over. What a coincidence. She said with a smile, senior sister Am, junior brother Lin, you are here too? Who is this? Ling Yunpo pretended not to know Guanzhen and asked curiously. Guanzhen's face was ashen, his lips trembled, and he struggled to break free from Guanzhen's grip, summoned his flying sword and stepped on it. This is my cousin of the Guan family, Guanzhen. Guanzhen laughed. He went to Kunlun without telling the Guan family, and I happened to run into him when he was out for training this time, so I will teach him a lesson. What does it have to do with you whether I join Kunlun or Shushan? Guanzhen gritted his teeth and said angrily. As long as you have the blood of the Guan family in your body, you can't be separated from the Guan family. Guanzhen's tone was still calm, but there was a slight contempt in his eyes. This made Guanzhen even more furious and crazy, and he screamed almost hysterically. If the Guan family really had any feelings for me, how could they let my mother? Before he finished speaking, the rest of his words were blocked in his throat, because Guanzhen had slapped him cleanly and neatly, knocking him completely stunned. Ling Yunpo, or rather Qiu Changtian, had never seen junior brother Guan so miserable. Usually when he was listening to the sutras in the cave, he would always sit alone in the corner without saying a word, and the few words he occasionally said were mostly sarcastic. Qiu Changtian thought that this was his personality, but now it seems that there is something else going on. Nzisu looked at Guanzhen in surprise. After knowing each other for many years, she had never seen this woman so angry. Although she still had a hypocritical smile on her face, her muscles were almost stiff and she couldn't hold her face. It was obvious that she was just trying hard not to lose her composure on the spot. I'm sorry to make you two laugh. Guanzhen grabbed Guanzhen's arm again and dragged him aside without saying anything. We still have family affairs to deal with, so I'll say goodbye now. The two flew away quickly on their swords and soon disappeared into the night. I didn't expect someone from the Guan family to join Kunlun. Nzisu said in surprise. The Longyu Guan family has poured all its resources and connections into Shushan, but why did that person join Kunlun? To be different. I think there may be some inside story. Ling Yunpo sighed. Nzisu nodded and had no objection to this statement. She was already unfamiliar with Guanzhen, but she was just wondering what could make Guanzhen show such a depressed expression as if he had been betrayed. However, if she and junior brother Ling put themselves in his shoes, it seemed to make sense. If Ling Yunpo suddenly decided to join Kunlun, Nzisu was not sure whether she would let him go with tears. She didn't dare to think about it anymore. Chapter 232. Tomb sweeping and worshipping. After seeing off Guanzhen and Guanzhen, the two returned to the room of the inn. Ling Yunpo quickly entered into a state of meditation, but Nzisu was a little confused and couldn't calm down. She felt that something was wrong with her. In the past, if Ling Yunpo wanted to leave King Luo Peak, although she was sad and painful, she would not force him to stay. Because the reason is very obvious. There is no master in the King Luo Peak lineage. Without a master, and not being valued by the sect, what is the difference between him and a casual cultivator? In addition, junior brother Ling has the qualification of natural sword bone, so there is naturally no need to be trapped in King Luo Peak. Not to mention anything else, there have been 2 times of recruiting. One was from Ziyun Peak, and the other was from the ancestor of the Yuan family. Although she was heartbroken at the time, she was still willing to let junior brother make his own choice. If junior brother wants to fly away, even if she is reluctant, she will not force him to stay. However, when she heard Yuan Zhenyu talking about Yuan's and joining cunning, she subconsciously thought about what would happen if her junior brother left. The first thought that popped into her mind was to teach him a lesson like Yuan Zhenyu did, to force him to change his mind and keep him in King Luo Peak. After all, Yuan Zhen was born in the Yuan family, and he had a noble family blood relationship, so Yuan Zhenyu could not tolerate his betrayal. But junior brother Lin, what kind of identity do I have to have the overbearing idea of forcing him not to leave? Thinking of this, Zisu felt a little terrified. It was as if she suddenly found that she was no longer the same person as before. She was upset all night. When she woke up the next day, she naturally hit dark circles under her eyes. "Hey, senior sister." Ling Yunpo met her in the corridor and asked with concern, "Why do you look so haggard? Did you not enter into meditation last night?" "Nothing." Zisu smiled helplessly and did not answer. She just looked around and said something else. "It's about half an hour from here to my hometown. Let's go." The 2 left Jiangkang City, found a deserted place, and flew up together. After crossing the Yangtze River and turning northeast, they soon arrived at an old village deep in the mountains. The village is located in the mountains. Although transportation is inconvenient, it can avoid war when the world is in chaos. Therefore, it is very peaceful and quiet, and it has not changed much in hundreds of years. "We will enter the village quietly later, and don't let the villagers see us," Zisu said softly, looking at the houses in the valley in the distance. "Why?" Ling Yunpo asked curiously, "After so many years, do they still recognize me? I come back every 10 years, and there will always be someone who recognizes me." Zisu sighed, "It's better to have less trouble than more," Ling Yunpo said, and immediately understood. People who practice Taoism often choose to keep a low profile and try not to reveal their identities when walking in the world. Probably because if they're seen by mortals, a lot of people will come to ask for immortals and medicine, which is very troublesome. Zisu's situation is even more special. Her mother is buried here, and the tomb is not convenient to move, so she can only rely on the villagers to take care of it. In this way, it is not good to alienate the villagers. After all, my sister is not the kind of person who is heartless. The 2 of them quietly circled and came to the back mountain of the village, and saw large and small graves on the hillside. The grave of Zisu's mother is located on the highest mountain top. Landing in front of the grave, Ling Yunpo looked carefully and found that there was a lot of dust and fallen leaves around the grave, but the weeds were not growing well. Someone should have swept the grave here a few months ago. He made a spell and the Dao magic on the Kingping sword was activated. A water-based sword energy swept past like rain, sweeping away all the dust, fallen leaves and weeds in front of the grave. Zisu took out the offerings, chicken, duck, fish, goose, and a treasure dry pot, and placed them one by one in front of his mother's grave. He also took out an incense burner and lit sandalwood. As a cultivator, you shouldn't believe in these things. After all, everyone knows that after death, the soul falls into the underworld and then reincarnates. The fact that the senior sister came here to worship now is nothing more than a ritual significance than a practical significance, so Ling Yunpo also helped to take out the futon and put it in front of the tombstone. Zisu waved his hand and did not take the futon. Instead, he knelt down on the blue stone slab. After paying homage, Yining bowed her head and closed her eyes, clasped her hands in front of her chest, and began to pray to her deceased mother. Ling Yunpo saw her lips move slightly, just like the praying to the master in King Luo Peak. He thought to himself, "I don't know if the master can hear it, but your mother must not be able to hear it. Anyway, it's just a request for comfort." His eyes fell on the tombstone, and suddenly he was distracted. This master's wife and Suzu, who was so gentle and beautiful when she was alive, could actually make Su Jian, who was so arrogant and didn't care about his relatives, be influenced to change from forgetting the flow of emotions to cultivating the flow of emotions, shocking almost the entire Shushan. Looking closely at the profile of Sister Anne, such a delicate and beautiful face, combined with Su Jian who appeared in the secret realm of the palace, is a perfect middle-aged handsome man. I think the appearance of this master's wife is probably not bad. Zisu finished praying here, opened her eyes and stood up, but her face was slightly red for some reason, and I don't know what she said to her mother. "Junior brother," she said gently, Okay, let's go back. Senior sister, I was asked by someone to go to Kyushu County when I'm free. Ling Yunpo said tentatively, I just happened to come to Yangzhou this time, so I want to finish my business before returning to Shushan. Okay. Zisu nodded, I'll go with you. Here she is, this is my senior sister. Ling Yunpo was deeply moved. If it were junior sisters Yu, Miss Shi and Witch Jiang, how could they agree so easily without asking anything? Only senior sister, who has unreserved trust in me, would agree to go with me so readily. Before leaving, there is one more thing to do. Zisu suddenly said. She and Ling Yunpo turned into sword lights, flew towards the village one after the other, and quickly landed in the backyard of a family. There was a woman dressed as a peasant in the backyard. She was feeding chickens. Suddenly, she saw someone falling from the sky and was so scared that she almost screamed. Instead, the old woman beside her reacted quickly, and she took her into her arms and covered her mouth. King, how are you? Zisu nodded and greeted. Well. The old woman smiled and said, Olden has gone out. Would the immortal keep a simple meal here and take a rest? Who is this? Zisu did not answer, but cast her eyes on the unfamiliar woman next to her. My daughter-in-law has been married for about 5 or 6 years. The old woman explained hurriedly, the immortal comes once every 10 years. She had no chance to see him before. This time she almost bumped into him. I'm sorry, it's okay. Zisu took out a pill bottle from his sleeve, which was a common bitter pill used to regulate the body in the Taoist sects. He put it on the ground. I have to thank the village chief for taking care of my mother over the years. No thanks. The old woman waved her hand and stared at the pill bottle on the ground. After all, we are all from our village and have the same surname, so it's only right to take care of us. Since the village chief is not here, I'll leave. Zisu turned around and said, Junior brother. Well, let's go. Ling Yunpo nodded. The two flew up into the sky on their swords again and disappeared. The woman finally broke free from her mother-in-law's arms, picked up the pill bottle on the ground, and said hesitantly, Mom, give it to me. The old woman snatched the pill bottle, first confirmed that there was indeed a pill in it, and then solemnly warned, except your father-in-law and me, no one else can be told about this. Including your husband and those careless uncles and nephews. I see. The woman also understood, and said excitedly, is there an elixir in it? No matter what disease you have, just take one and it will be cured. The old woman said in a trembling voice, of course it is an elixir without a doubt. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Mundo Fanfic Novelers, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelers. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 233. The Demon Slayer at Tianmu Mountain. This time, when they went to Yangzhou Kyushu County, the thunder method they were looking for was called Shenxiaolei. According to the general outline of the 5 thunders, Shenxiaolei is best at extinction of life, which is very effective against those demons with strong vitality. Together with Yushu Lei, which specializes in killing evil spirits, and Dadong Lei, which specializes in killing demons from outside the sky, they are called 3 fundamentals of thunder method, and almost every thunder cultivator can master them proficiently. Of course, the thunder cultivation tradition is basically extinct now. Shenxiaolei, which was once widely circulated, also disappeared from the world with the departure of Chonghe's Henren. Fortunately, Ling Yunpo asked around and found that the Taoist tradition left by the other party was still there, located on Tianmu Mountain south of Kyushu County. It is said that there is only one Taoist temple left, with 2 or 3 disciples. The 2 set off from Guangling County on their swords and went all the way south. They saw continuous paddy fields below, crisscrossed fields, and tourist convoys on the road, coming and going. It is obvious that this year is a good year of peace and harvest. Unfortunately, for rural Taoist priests, peace means no demons and ghosts, and good harvest means no drought, but catching demons and rain are the main sources of income for rural Taoist priests. Yangzhou has been peaceful and productive for many years, which has led to the worsening business of rural Taoist priests. Now Chonghe's descendants are in a miserable state, which can be explained. After passing through Linnan and Kyushu, the 2 arrived at Tianmu Mountain and landed at the Taoist temple on the top of the mountain. What a shabby Taoist temple. To be honest, whether it is Ling Yunpo, Qiu Cheng Tian, Luo Yan, or Wei Dongliu, they have never seen such a shabby Taoist temple. There is not a single good tile on the roof, most of the wall skin has fallen off, and the threshold stone is even missing a corner. Ling Yunpo asked himself that if he wanted to find someone to pray for rain or catch ghosts, he would probably turn around and leave when he saw this shabby facade. He walked up and knocked on the door, but there was no response. No one is inside. Zisu said. It seems that I can only come back next time. Ling Yunpo just turned around and saw a little Taoist priest coming from the end of the opposite mountain road. The little Taoist priest was wearing a shabby, patched Taoist robe, carrying a basket full of wild vegetables, staring at the two visitors in front of him in amazement. Ling Yunpo was handsome and resolute, with sharp eyes. Zisu was tall and slender, with an imposing manner. In addition, both of them were wearing Shushan Taoist robes, and they were obviously from big sects. The little Taoist priest was so scared that he didn't even want the basket. He rushed over and banged his head. Finally, someone from Kunlun has come. Please, senior, save Master. Master has been captured by demons. Ling Yunpo. Zisu. Calm down, we are not Kunlun monks. Looking at the little Taoist priest who was kneeling in front of him and kowtowed continuously, Ling Yunpo explained helplessly, we are Shushan monks. And you said your master was captured by demons, what do you mean? Stop kowtow. The little Taoist priest raised his head slowly, his eyes were confused, and it was obvious that he had been kowtowed to a point of stupidity. Zisu was also speechless, so he took out a white jade wine pot. First, he poured a little into his hand, then flicked it with his fingers, and it just bounced into the little Taoist priest's mouth. Cough, cough, cough. The child was suddenly irritated by the wine, and coughed several times in a row, and his mind was finally clear. You, aren't you from Kunlun? He looked at the two in a trance. We are the sword immortals of Shushan. Ling Yunpo replied. Where is Shushan? The little Taoist asked in confusion. You don't need to care where Shushan is. Zisu said patiently, you just need to know that our Shushan has a very good relationship with Kunlun, so where was your master captured? In the 1,000-foot valley. On the east side of the 19th peak. The little Taoist's eyes lit up, and he immediately told everything in one breath, like a bamboo chew pouring beans, the monster over there is powerful. Master didn't dare to provoke it, but when he was eliminating monsters in Kyuju County, he accidentally killed a little monster under the other party's command. Later, the monster refused and came to argue with Master. Master couldn't argue, so he was captured by the other party. What is your master's cultivation? Ling Yunpo asked, what is the cultivation of the monster? Cultivation? I don't know. The little Taoist said blankly, but the monster is very powerful, it can fly around in the clouds. He talked and gestured for a long time, but couldn't get the point out, so Ling Yunpo could only interrupt him and said, let's not talk about anything else. Can the monster transform? Transform? It means turning into a human. It shouldn't be possible. The young Taoist priest recalled carefully for a moment. Master said that the demons that can transform into humans are powerful. If we encounter them, we must flee quickly. There will be no monks from any island to deal with them. Penglai Island? Zisu asked for confirmation. Yangzhou is the sphere of influence of Penglai King Temple, of course. Qian Moduo does not think so. Yes, yes, yes. The young Taoist priest nodded repeatedly. It hasn't transformed, which means it hasn't formed a demon pill yet. Ling Yunpo raised his head and said to his senior sister. It can be killed. Zisu nodded. Where is the 1,000-foot deep valley you mentioned? Ling Yunpo asked the young Taoist priest again. Over there. The young Taoist priest pointed in a direction. Go over 3 mountains over there, on the east side of the 4th mountain. Before he finished speaking, he suddenly screamed. Because Ling Yunpo had already clamped him under his armpits, flew up on the sword, and flew to a height of nearly 100 feet. Where is it? Point it out to me directly. He asked again. The young Taoist priest was still exclaiming, and after hearing that, he tried to calm down for a moment, then pointed to the distance and said, that's it. That long and narrow canyon. Okay. Ling Yunpo turned around and said to his senior sister, and the two turned northwest and dropped the young Taoist priest off outside the city of Kyuju County. You stay here first, lest when we exorcise the demons, the escaped demons go to your Taoist temple to vent their anger. Zisu said this, and took out the kingship pill. I see you haven't practiced fasting yet. Take 1 pill of this pill a day, and you can go a day without food. Thank you, fairy sister. The young Taoist priest said sincerely. Ling Yunpo couldn't help but sneer at the side. Senior sister was not so careful, and it was her own idea to send the young Taoist priest away. But for a child, the sister is undoubtedly easier to approach than the brother, so she didn't bother with him. The two turned around and set off again, this time flying directly to the entrance of the canyon, and then descending with the sword light. It is the way for high-level cultivators to go in with a swagger and fly in with a sword. Because it is far easier to capture a target on the ground from the sky than to lock it from the ground. After entering the canyon and walking on the mountain plank road for a while, Ling Yunpo suddenly cast his eyes into the distance. There is a demon. On the rock on the opposite side of the mountain stream, there stood a horned demon with a deer head and a human body. It stood up with its back backwards and looked over here from afar. The next second, a stream of blazing light flew by and nailed the demon to death on the rock wall. Chapter 234. Eliminate the demon. Sister, you have great swordsmanship. Ling Yunpo exclaimed. Just now, he almost put himself in Qiu Chang's shoes, and subconsciously thought that this was Sister's Yu's Yu sword. Because senior brother Qiu used to go out with Sister's Yu to train, he liked to play this game of who kills the monster first with senior brother, but Sister was not so stubborn. She might just have seen the monster and killed it without thinking too much. It's just a white rainbow piercing the sun, how can it be called good swordsmanship? Zisu smiled slightly. Sister, this white rainbow piercing the sun has the essence of the fast 7-killing swordsmanship. Ling Yunpo said righteously, Junior brother, I'm not talented, but I also want to show my skills. He pinched the sword formula with his hand, pointed forward, and the Kingping sword shot out. Just then, another little demon turned out from the opposite mountain road. Seeing his companion's body nailed to the cliff, he quickly raised the gong and cymbals in his hand. Just as he was about to hit it hard, he suddenly felt a chill in his neck and his vision dimmed instantly. Not bad. Zisu commented, you can try more changes in the sword path. The little demon was killed by the Kingping sword, and the gongs and cymbals in his hands fell to the ground, making an extremely loud sound of metal striking, which instantly echoed in the valley and startled a flock of gulls and herons. How to change? Ling Yunpo asked thoughtfully, recalling the Kingping sword from a distance. You mean to use the terrain to try to pass through the blind spot of the target's sight? Yes. Zisu also recalled the Feian sword and said, although the straight line between 2 points is the shortest, in many cases a straight line is not the best choice. The 7-killing sword technique emphasizes the preemptive attack on the enemy, but it does not rely solely on speed to defeat the enemy. That kind of swordsmanship is too poor. We usually practice sparring on King Luo Peak, mostly focusing on confrontation of moves and rhythm control, and basically does not involve terrain factors. This time it's rare to encounter actual combat. I will teach you how to use various terrains to perform the 7-killing sword technique. As soon as the work fell, a large number of monsters rushed out from the opposite mountain road, including birds, beasts, feathers, wings, scales and hooves, and all kinds of animals. What's going on with you, King Temple? Ling Yunpo frowned and said, there are so many demons here, but they just ignore them. Just in time to test the sword. Zisu said in a deep voice, stepped on the cold sword and drew his body, and rushed into the group of demons in an instant. After a while, countless broken limbs and arms flew out, blood and flesh splattered everywhere, and even the mountain stream below us dyed red. Ling Yunpo watched attentively from behind, and was amazed at the exquisite swordsmanship of his senior sister. A snake demon approached quietly from behind him, and was about to bite the back of his neck, but he saw that the sword box behind him suddenly spit out golden light, and the thunder sword swept past, and the snake demon was immediately torn into pieces. Zisu returned with a sword, and his robe sleeves fluttered in the wind, but there was no trace of blood on his body. Looking at the stream valley in front of him, it was already a mess and unbearable to look at. Did you see it clearly? Zisu asked softly. Yes, senior sister. Ling Yunpo nodded. He saw clearly just now that those demons were almost all at the key refining stage. Even if he went alone with a sword, he could easily escape unscathed. But to be like senior sister, with not a trace of dirt sticking to his body amidst the flying blood and flesh, his current swordsmanship is really not good enough. No wonder Arjing said that senior sister probably has touched the threshold of natural sword heart, that is, a certain realm of Tao. Just as Zisu used the little demon to test the sword and demonstrated it to Ling Yunpo in person, killing his way in. In a cave somewhere in the Kyansan Valley, the old Taoist priest was tremblingly studying the prohibition. Next to him was a green-faced and fan-backed demon, who impatiently slammed the steel fork on the ground and urged and cursed. It's bitter. It's bitter. The old Taoist priest shouted in his heart. If I had known that there were so many demons here, I would have abandoned the Taoist temple left by the ancestors and run away with my apprentice as soon as possible. Are you done, old Taoist priest? Hearing the noisy sound in the distance, the bad demon became more and more impatient. If you wait for the king to come back and still haven't cracked the ban, your heart and liver will be dug out. I think the old Taoist priest has studied something about this ban. The old Taoist priest smiled ingratiatingly. I wonder if you have heard of dreaming of the heavenly maiden mountain and chanting a farewell song. Ah? The bad demon made a confused sound. There are legends about immortals in Tianmu Mountain in Yangzhou since ancient times. The old Taoist priest continued. It is said that there was a banished immortal who was reincarnated as a human. One day, he dreamt about Tianmu Mountain and finally arrived at the palace of the immortals. This poem was written based on his dream travels. The poem once said, "The thunderbolt of Laik, the hills and mountains collapsed. The stone door of the cave suddenly opened." That is to say, it is necessary to bombard the cave with thunder to open the entrance of the immortal palace. So that's it. The bad demon was overjoyed. Then where can I find this thunder method? It's right here. The old Taoist priest smiled, and a white light suddenly lit up in his palm. He slapped the bad demon with lightning speed. Before the bad demon could react, he was hit by the divine thunder. The original expression of surprise was still frozen on his face, but his whole body was stiff like a stone statue, and he fell straight forward to the ground. A divine thunder instantly wiped out all the vitality in its body. Its power was so terrifying. The old Taoist grabbed its wings and dragged it into the cave with great effort, then rushed down the mountain. With his current key refining stage, he could only fire 3 shots of the divine thunder at most, and there were at least thousands of demons entrenched in the mountain. He was no match for them alone. The leader of the demons was a deer spirit, who had heard from somewhere that there was a cave of immortals in Tianmu Mountain, so he led his little demons to entrench in the mountain, trying to dig out clues and traces. Moreover, the deer spirit king was cunning and forbearing, and usually tried his best to restrain his men from harassing human villages, so he did not attract the attention of nearby cultivation sects. No, I have to go out and report the news. Otherwise, if the deer spirit king finds the immortal relics, Yangzhou will never have peace again. The old Taoist stumbled along the stream, his shoes and socks wet by the spring water and mud, and his hair was messy, and suddenly he saw 2 people descending from the sky. "Excuse me, are you Taoists in Xingfa?" one of the young men asked. The old Taoist priest looked at him in astonishment, only to see that he was handsome and heroic, with a resolute expression, wearing a green-clad robe and carrying a sword box as tall as his body. In his memory, it seemed that only the sword immortal of Shushan would dress like this. "I am Xingfa." The old Taoist priest bowed his head and said hurriedly, "There are many monsters in this mountain, let's go out and talk." "We have killed all the monsters," the female sword immortal next to him said. Although the other party was dressed as a female crown with long hair tied up, in addition to the gentleness and beauty of a woman, she also had a heroic spirit, which complemented the male sword immortal. "You may not know," the old Taoist said hesitantly, "there are many demons hiding in this mountain. There are thousands of them in the forest, under the stream, in the valley, and at the bottom of the cave, more than 1,200. Ling Yunpo interrupted him and said, "Kill them all." Old Taoist. He opened and closed his lips slightly, but didn't know what to say. More than 1,200, even if it was a pit, it would take a butcher several days to kill it. I can only say that he is worthy at being the sword immortal of Shushan. Chapter 235. Thunderbolts from the sky, mountains and hills collapse. 1,000-foot deep valley, 1,002 demons, all killed. Even though the old Taoist priest has spent his whole life exorcising demons, he is now frightened by the ruthless methods of the Shushan disciples, although it only lasts for a while. More of it is naturally to relieve his anger. It is time to kill the shark. Quoji County is considered a large county in Yangzhou, so the public security is relatively stable. For example, in the Minyu area with many mountains in the south, tens of thousands of humans die at the hands of demons every year. Who can they complain to? If you think the Shushan Sword Immortal's methods are too ruthless, why don't you accuse the demons of being too cruel to eat people? The demons in the world are formed by snakes, insects, rats, ants, tigers, leopards, wolves and wolves absorbing the essence of the sun and the moon. They can neither be completely exterminated nor change their cannibalistic nature. Only sharks. I, the old Taoist priest, agree with both hands and support it from the bottom of my heart. Facing the flattery of the old Taoist priest, both of them looked indifferent, without any complacency. Zisu didn't care about these. Ling Yunpo had heard a lot when he was the senior brother Qiu. In the eyes of the old Taoist priest, it was another proof of the demeanor of the disciples of a big sect. Since the old Taoist priest didn't have a flying sword, only a homemade peachwood sword, the two of them walked out of the valley, looking at the corpses of demons along the way, and the old Taoist priest was amazed again. But it's better to burn those demon corpses, he said carefully. The demons' bodies are full of turpid air, and if they're eaten by wild birds and beasts, they will turn into demons again in a few years. That's right, Taoist friend. Zisu shot out the Feian sword, which flew lightly in the air, casting a little fire rain, causing the demon corpses to spontaneously ignite without wind. You two have done a great deed. The old Taoist continued to flatter. The evil spirits in Tianmu Mountain have been cleared, and Qiuju County will have no worries. It can be said that the people of one area have been saved, which is indeed a great merit. Taoist friend. Ling Yunpo saw that he was talking non-stop, so he interrupted and said, I came here this time because someone asked me to ask about the Taoist lineage of Chonghe. Taoist Chonghe. The old Taoist pondered for a moment. It is indeed the name of the founder of our sect. It's just, the founder said that his Taoist lineage and magic were passed down from Kunlin. Please forgive me for not leaking it. I see. Ling Yunpo nodded and smiled. It doesn't matter, I'm just asking. Since it is only passed down from Kunlin, then next time I will change Qiu Chang Time's name and come over, so I won't have to worry about not getting the Shengxiao Thunder. His answer was straightforward, which made the old Taoist feel a little sorry. People came from afar to save him from danger, and it is not too much to ask for thunder magic as compensation. After all, the divine thunder belongs to Taoism, not Qi refining technique. In addition, it is of a low rank, so it is not worthy of becoming the foundation of a Taoist sect, and naturally there is no need to hide it. Unfortunately, the ancestor emphasized that this method cannot be passed on to others. In this way, I will have nothing to repay, but will owe the other party a favor. Thinking of this, the old Taoist priest's heart sank slightly. It is easy to give magic, but it is difficult to owe a favor. What's more, the other party is from a big sect in Shushan. When you really need to repay a favor, it may be when you need to go through fire and water. Thinking of this, he finally made up his mind and said, Do you two Taoist friends know why the demons want to kidnap me here? Oh? Ling Yunpo asked subconsciously, why? Maybe because they know from somewhere that there are immortal relics in Tianmu Mountain. The old Taoist priest said solemnly. Immortal relics? Ling Yunpo looked surprised and looked at Zisu for a moment. If it is really the remains of immortals, whether it is a secret place or a cave, the first group of explorers will definitely benefit the most, unless they are limited by their strength and realm and cannot explore it completely. Why are you telling me this? Ling Yunpo asked with a smile. I can't repay you for saving my life. The old Taoist said solemnly, I'm at a low level, so I naturally have no chance to encounter it. It's just, our sect's lineage was originally inherited from Kunlin. The descendants are not good, and now it is declining and has no ability to maintain it. If we can exchange this for Kunlin to let me and my disciple return to the sect, it would be a good thing. So you want to return to Kunlin? Ling Yunpo immediately understood and smiled. You trust us. The old Taoist was originally kidnapped and coerced by the demon, but he accidentally learned the information about the remains of the immortals. Now using it to exchange for returning to Kunlin is a blessing in disguise for him and his disciple. However, in order to repay the two people's life-saving grace, the old Taoist made a decision to give the first opportunity to explore the ruins. This is trusting us not to cross the river and burn the bridge, and after getting the information, they will kill the old Taoist priest and then go back to Shushan to report their achievements, right? What do you mean trustworthy? The old Taoist priest asked doubtfully. The Immortal Ruins is a secret place. It doesn't matter if you two explore it repeatedly. Ling Yunpo. It turns out that the other party didn't even think of the possibility of killing to silence at all. Ahem, my mind is too dirty. However, since it is a secret place of immortals, there must be many treasures hidden, or it is a place of adventure, otherwise it is unreasonable. Thinking of this, Ling Yunpo was a little moved. Looking at Zisu again, the senior sister's eyes were also shining, and she cast an inquiring look at him. Do you want to accept it? Accept it. Ling Yunpo made up his mind and said with a cupped hand, Thank you very much, Taoist friend. No, I should thank you for saving my life. The old Taoist priest bowed in return. The three of them walked on the stone steps in the mountains, and heard the old Taoist priest say, Speaking of the immortal relics, there are actually poems and lyrics that have been recorded for a long time, but later generations don't know it. The poem says, "Wearing Qigong's clogs, I climbed the blue cloud ladder. I saw the sea sun on the half wall and heard the sky chicken in the sky." This means if you want to visit the cave, you must first climb high. Continuing to climb the mountain road, after walking for a while, I saw a stream in front of me. The gurgling water was elegant and interesting. The old Taoist priest pointed to the river and said, the poem says, "The road is uncertain among thousands of rocks and turns, and it is suddenly dark when I lean against the stone to lose myself in the flowers. The roar of bears and the roar of dragons are in the deep forest, and the top of the mountain is shocked." This means the mountain road is rugged, behind the stream and the forest. Crossing the mountain stream and passing through the woods, the three of them came to a cave. This is the entrance to the immortal ruins. The old Taoist sighed and said, the poem says, "The thunderbolt of Laik, the hills and mountains collapsed. The stone door of the cave opened with a bang, which means that thunder magic must be used to activate the band and open the door. It's just that the old Taoist's cultivation level is too low, and the practice of Shengxiao thunder is too shallow, so there is a treasure mountain but no way to enter. If you too have the corresponding magical powers, you can try it." Ling Yunpo laughed dumbly. It turned out that he had a trick up his sleeve here. Yes, although the immortal ruins are given as a reward, if my senior sister and I can't open the entrance to the ruins, then naturally it can't be blamed on this old Taoist, and Kunlun will naturally have an explanation. "Senior sister, do you know thunder magic?" Ling Yunpo asked casually. "No." Zisu shook her head and said truthfully. She usually obeyed Su Jian's instructions, concentrated on practicing swordsmanship, and was not interested in other magic. "I don't know how to use thunder magic either." Ling Yunpo made a sword gesture and summoned the thunder sword from the sword box, "But I have this sword. Could it be a golem-type flying sword?" The old Taoist priest said in surprise, "Thunder magic is known for its great power. Even if the Taoist magic on the sword is thunder-related, it cannot compare to the power of the Five Thunders orthodox method. It may be difficult to open this relic. Why not try it first?" Ling Yunpo smiled slightly, took 2 steps forward, and left the 2 behind him. Holding the thunder sword in his right hand, he stroked the sword with his left hand, secretly pinched out the jade pivot thunder, and attached it to it with the True Spirit Seal Sword technique. This True Spirit Seal Sword technique was originally taught by King Ping Sword, who taught him to use the Xiao Fu Shangyang Sword Key to tame the vengeful spirits on the Wangyi Shi Jing Sword. This time, Ling Yunpo learned and applied it, using Jade Pivot Thunder to attach the sword instead. The thunder sword suddenly screamed. "What kind of thunder method is this? Wait, Master Sword Master, no. Too much, the thunder sword will be damaged." Its voice was initially a little angry, but later it became teary. After all, it was a thunder-attributed flying sword, and the heavenly thunder cleansing would only benefit it, not harm it. Therefore, it shouted no with its mouth, but it sounded like "give it more." Ling Yunpo was a heart of stone, and was not moved by its shouting at all. He just hit all the jade pivot thunder on the sword, and then flew forward with the sword. The thunder sword and the jade pivot thunder on it hit the rock wall deep in the cave, and immediately made a loud noise that shook the earth. Chapter 236. The stone door of the cave opened suddenly. The earth shook, and the thunder roared. Even though the old Taoist priest was prepared, he was almost frightened. What kind of thunder-attributed flying sword is that? The Taoist magic on the sword is so powerful that even my Shengxiao thunder is not as powerful as it. When the smoke and dust around them cleared, everyone saw that the rock wall in front of them had disappeared, and turned into a large aqua blue light curtain, like a clear and bright sky. The immortal ruins have been opened. The 3 of them could not hide their surprise, but they all remained calm. The old Taoist priest knew that his realm was low, and even if he entered, he would probably be powerless, and he might even be worried about his life. Zisu was well informed and knew that although the secret realm was designed to allow people to enter, not everyone was welcome. For example, to the west of Shushan, among the Taibo snow peaks, there is a red demon palace. It is unknown who created it. It is a test for female monks to enter. If they fail, they will be sent out by the ban. The difficulty for male monks to enter is doubled. If they die in it, they will die for real. In short, although the immortal secret realm has been successfully opened, it cannot be taken lightly. Ling Yunpo was well prepared and told Kunlin in his heart, "Jin, how is it inside? The entrance should be 2A, so that you can't get out after entering." Kunlin analyzed, "Well, judging from the ban method, it doesn't seem to have any malicious intent. Whether there is malicious intent or not, this can also be seen." Ling Yunpo said strangely, Of course, you are also someone who understands formations. This formation is similar to a ban. Jing explained, some formations are mainly for restriction and siege, and their lethality is not strong, leaving room for many places. Some formations are obviously to trap you to death even if they can't kill you. The two methods are definitely different. What you said does make some sense. Ling Yunpo stopped pestering and turned to Nzisu and smiled, "Senior sister, let's go." "Okay." Nzisu turned around and said, "Doi's disciple, we met him in the mountains before. In order to prevent the escaped demons from seeking revenge on him, we first placed him in Kyuju City." The old Taoist was surprised to hear this, and naturally thanked him profusely, thinking that these two people were careful and kind, and it was worth it for me to reveal a secret to them. After saying goodbye to the old Taoist, Nzisu first picked up the Feian sword and stepped into the aqua-blue light curtain. Ling Yunpo followed in, only to feel that the sky was spinning and the surroundings suddenly became bright. I saw that the two are now in a square. The square is located at the top of the mountain, with white jade railings and blue stone steps. It is somewhat similar to the Tianji Square on the golden summit of Mount Emei in Shushan, but the carvings and styles are much more majestic. Just in front of the two people, connecting the white jade square, is a wide and straight suspended corridor, leading to the pavilions and towers in the distance. Ling Yunpo keenly discovered that the architectural style of these pavilions and towers is very similar to the secret realm of the Queen Mother of the West in the Kunlun Mountains. They all stand high in the clouds and mist, with the magnificence and grandeur of the palace of the immortals. However, the secret realm of the Queen Mother of the West is heroic and simple, without paying attention to details. The architecture of this secret realm is exquisite and gorgeous. Looking closely, the flying eaves and empty pavilions are all meticulously carved. The green tiles and golden pillars are all shining. The corridor leading to these pavilions and towers is built with dark sandalwood, which is very elegant. Every few feet, there are carvings of strange beasts sitting cross-legged on the handrails, but it is impossible to recognize what kind of monsters they are. At the entrance of the corridor, connecting to the square, there are two pillars on the left and right. The left pillar is engraved with 12 towers and 5 cities. The right pillar is engraved with white jade capital in heaven. White jade capital? Ling Yunpo stared at the pillar, secretly surprised. "Junior brother, do you know the origin of this secret realm?" Nzisu asked curiously. "No, I just think the name White Jade Capital is very grand." Ling Yunpo said with a wry smile, "Senior sister, have you heard of it?" "No." Nzisu shook her head. In fact, Ling Yunpo lied. The place name White Jade Capital has a lot of records in the Taoist scriptures, but nowadays, except for the monks of Pengliu King Temple, few people will read the Taoist scriptures. According to the Taoist scriptures, to ascend to the heaven as a mortal, one must first go to White Jade Capital, then go to Golden Palace, then pass 7 Treasures Mysterious Garden, and finally Great Bright Hall. According to the annotations of the predecessors of Yu King Temple, these 4 places are not really describing the environment of the heaven, but are metaphors to imply the 4 steps of ascending to immortality. Baiyujing refers to the body. Ban Jingke refers to consciousness. Kai Bak Xuan Yuan refers to the soul. Dagyumengdine refers to the origin. The 4 steps to immortality, each step is more difficult than ascending to heaven. For example, the immortal ranks are divided into 4 categories, which are divided according to the completion rate of the 4 steps to immortality. The Earth Immortal rank, no more than Baiyujingqing, means that the body is defective, so every 1,000 years, it has to go through tribulations, which is the lowest among the immortals. The Heavenly Immortal rank, blocked by the Golden Palace, means that the consciousness is not pure, so it has to cut off the 3 corpses, abandon human nature and keep divinity, which is the inferior among the immortals. The Golden Immortal rank, staying in Kai Bak Xuan Yuan, means that the soul is clear, the body and consciousness are all transparent, and can be completely sanctified, which is the best among the immortals. As for the Daluo Jinxian, sitting in the Daguang Mengdine, it is one of the few superpowers among the Golden Immortals, the best among the immortals. At this level, not only is the soul clear and the body holy, but even the origin is in harmony with the heaven and earth. Unless the sky collapses and the earth breaks, and the world is destroyed, it is basically impossible to be killed by any external force. Of course, it is said that there is a more powerful realm above the Daluo Jinxian, called Hunyuan Daluo Jinxian. At this level, even if the universe is annihilated and the avenue collapses, he will not die. In short, since this secret realm is called Baiyujing, it is very likely to be a secret realm that tests the strength of the root bone. Because Ling Yunpo's character setting should know nothing about the Duzhang, so this information cannot be told directly to the senior sister. Fortunately, the Shushan Sword Immortal accepts disciples, and the root bone qualification is the most important. As the first person under the Shushan Jindan, Zisu's root bone is definitely not bad. I have the qualification of natural sword bone, and my root bone is even more outrageous. Therefore, the next secret realm test should not be difficult for me and my senior sister, unless it is specially designed to only allow those above the Jindan level to participate. Ling Yunpo pondered for a long time, and Zisu beside him did not disturb him. He just walked around the square leisurely with his hands behind his back, admiring the clouds and mountains, and looking at the distant pavilions. She suddenly felt something in her heart, and realized that the layout of the pavilions in the distance gave her a strange sharp feeling. To put it in an analogy, it was like a sword that was locked in layers of sheaths, but still could not conceal its murderous aura. Chapter 237. The lower horses exchanged for the upper horses. The two stepped onto the corridor. The corridor was suspended in the air, without any support underneath, and it seemed to be shaky under the wind. Ling Yunpo was not the first time to step into this kind of building. You should know that the last time Qiu Changtian was promoted to the chief of Kunlun Foundation building realm, he walked through it once in Tianmen Hall. He knew that this kind of suspension was not affected by gravity and was supported by the immortal family's prohibition, so he was not timid or frightened. However, it was the first time for Zisu to walk, so her expression was extremely solemn. Feian sword and Handlai sword swirled back and forth around her, waiting for any unexpected situation to immediately turn into sword light and sweep the two away. She didn't breathe a sigh of relief until she passed the corridor steadily. After the corridor, it was in front of the first pavilion. On the right pillar of the door, 5 true forms round BQ was engraved, and on the left pillar of the door, bones are like Danken and appearances like infant was engraved. The handwriting was written in cinnabar, and the strokes were simple and vigorous. The former said forming a pill, and the latter said forming an infant, which made Ling Yunpo more and more certain that this secret realm must be a trial type, otherwise it would be impossible to card these Taoist philosophical sentences everywhere. It is the same reason as in the campus where people are taught and educated, and the walls of the corridors of the teaching buildings also like to hang portraits of great scientists and great writers. Zisu took a breath and pushed the door open first. Ling Yunpo was about to follow him in, but he saw a layer of transparent light film in front of him, blocking him firmly outside. The flag hunts the sky wind, summons the true energy of the 5 directions. The sword crosses the Big Dipper, clears the demonic atmosphere of 1,000 miles. A female voice sounded like a dream in the pavilion. Trialist, report your origin and name. Shushan, Zisu. Senior sister said calmly. Shushan and Zisu, challenge the first building of Baiyujing. The voice continued, generate a sword enemy based on your cultivation. As soon as the voice fell, a figure suddenly appeared on the blue brick ground opposite Zisu. The figure seemed to be made of clouds and mist, and the details were not clear. It could only be judged from the general outline that it was a Taoist wearing a Taoist robe, neither tall nor short, neither fat nor thin. It stretched out its right hand, which was condensed from the mist, and a flying sword emerged from its palm. It was also made of clouds and mist, about 3 feet and 7 inches long, and was much more solid than its body. Then, it suddenly threw its hand, and the flying sword stabbed straight at Zisu. Zisu was quick-eyed and quick-handed. The flying smoke sword bounced up from the palm of his hand and resisted the attack of the flying sword in the mist in the air. Judging from the sound and strength, it was almost the same as real gold and iron. Combined with the previous female voice, Zisu didn't know that the cloud and mist figure in front of her was the object generated by the secret realm of Baiyujing here, and she wanted her to challenge the trial. At that moment, she raised her eyebrows, released her evil spirit, and shouted in a low voice, and the flying smoke sword and the cold sword shot forward together. The cloud and mist figure quickly retracted the flying sword and tried to resist the defensor, but was attacked from both sides. He didn't last more than 10 breaths before Zisu pierced his heart and throat with a sword, and he was blown up alive. Ling Yunpo. He could see clearly from outside that the swordsmanship of the cloud and mist figure was almost at the level of a waffle-level cultivator, and the same realm as Zisu. However, senior sister Am's swordsmanship attainments were much higher than her level of cultivation, so that the opponent was killed in just a few rounds. Miserable. The sword duel ended, but the light film that sealed the door did not disappear. Zisu used the Feian sword to chop at the light film several times, but found that he couldn't break it at all. He could only say a few words to junior brother Link through the light film, and then walked towards the open door on the other side. As soon as he stepped over the threshold of the opposite door, he saw that the light film in front of Ling Yunpo suddenly disappeared, which seemed to mean that he had been allowed to pass. So, only one person can exist in a pavilion at the same time. And you must defeat the corresponding sword enemy to pass this pavilion. Ling Yunpo quickly understood the rules. Seeing the encouraging look from the sister opposite, it was clear that this one is not difficult to beat. He chuckled and stepped over the threshold. Just as he stood in the middle of the pavilion, he heard a female voice again. "Trialist, report your origin and name." "Shushan Ling Yunpo," he said confidently. "Shushan Ling Yunpo, challenged the first pavilion of by Yujing." The voice seemed to pause and said, "Generate a sword enemy based on comprehensive strength." As soon as the voice fell, mist rose in front of him, and in an instant it turned into a man and a sword, rushing towards him. Ling Yunpo pulled out the thunder sword, blocked the mist flying sword, and stabbed forward with the Kingping sword. The strategy was exactly the same as Sister Anne's. He wanted to use the double line advantage of the two-handed sword technique to destroy the mist figure in one breath. However, the misty figure stretched out his arm and pulled it from the air, and then a long sword condensed out, which clashed with the Kingping sword several times, sparks flying. "Ling Yunpo, didn't I fight with my senior sister just now with a single sword? Why do I have to use two hands to control the sword? You were picking on the weak, right? Fight well." The Kingping sword suddenly said, "There is something wrong with this guy." Ling Yunpo was refreshed and quickly concentrated on manipulating the two swords. This Kingping sword usually doesn't speak unless asked, but this time it suddenly spoke on its own initiative. "I think there must be some mystery in the Baiyujing secret realm that is worth it to speak out." Ling Yunpo began to intensify his offensive. The lazy sword rushed forward like a veteran on the battlefield. The Kingping sword came and went like a swordsman in the rivers and lakes. However, the misty figure on the opposite side still responded calmly, and the two misty long swords flew up and down. No matter how the lazy sword broke through, it blocked all the attacks. No matter how the Kingping sword changed its moves, it was still impenetrable. Almost evenly matched. Ling Yunpo was frightened by the killing, wondering what was going on. The swordsmanship level of the opponent was so much stronger than when he fought against my senior sister. Zisu was also worried outside, but she didn't expect that Baiyujing would play the trick of lower C for upper C, using the weak to deceive me, and then sending the strong to fight with my junior brother. Fortunately, Ling Yunpo was not really lower C. After all, he played a resolute and unyielding character, and immediately cheered up and attacked more and more fiercely, finally disrupting the opponent's swordsmanship rhythm, making him struggling. I saw that the mist figure took a few steps back as if he was exhausted. Then, a third mist flying sword suddenly condensed from its head, and then killed Ling Yunpo. Ling Yunpo was stunned, and quickly commanded Kingping sword to block the attack, and shouted in his heart that it was not good. Isn't this cheating? 3 swords against 2 swords, unless the difference in cultivation realm is too great, how can they win? They only need to use 2 swords to entangle my 2 swords separately, and the remaining sword will be used to kill all kinds of people. Thinking quickly in his mind, Ling Yunpo had to pull the Kingping sword and the lazy sword back to his side and switch to a defensive position. To use 2 swords against 3 swords, it is necessary to greatly increase the mutual support of the 2 swords, and being forced to compress the range of the sword path is also a helpless move. Zisu outside was also dumbfounded. You must know that normal cultivators can only do 2 things at most. If you want to control 3 swords at the same time, you must practice a secret technique called outside body incarnation, and place the spiritual consciousness separated from the cultivation on the 3rd flying sword. As for outside body incarnation, it is an extremely profound Taoist method. Not only are the refining materials rare and hard to find, but the refining method has long been lost. Now no one in the cultivation world can practice this technique. She had just figured out the key point when she saw the misty figure opposite waving his arms. 2 swords blocked Kingping and Lei Li respectively. The 3rd sword shot forward like lightning, piercing Ling Yunpo's arms that were subconsciously blocking his chest, and pierced through his chest. Chapter 238 Hidden Level Fuchu Mountain. It hurts. Ling Yunpo woke up and found that there was no wound on his chest. Ah, the Lord Sword Master is awake. Lady Jian fell from the sky and landed beside him and said, "Just now, His Majesty Kingping was arguing with His Majesty Jing." Ling Yunpo was silent for a moment, and decided to ignore its strange name for Kingping's sword and Kunlun mirror, and asked, "How long have I been unconscious?" "Not long, about a quarter of an hour." Lady Jian was about to flatter him when he saw Kingping's sword flying from a distance, also stopping in front of him, and said with a smile, "You're awake, Lord Sword Master." "Where is this?" Ling Yunpo looked around and found that he seemed to be not in the previous Tongtian pavilion, but in some kind of dungeon. The surroundings were no longer transparent wooden window frames, but airtight stone walls, which intersected at the top to form a slightly pointed cap. There was a thin layer of water on the ground, which probably reached the edge of the soles of the boots. In addition, the back of his robe was soaked, probably because he was lying on the ground just now. And the worst thing was that there was no passage around to leave this place. I don't know. Kingpin Sword replied, you were teleported here immediately after you were defeated. Before that, Yo-Yo didn't give any hints. I have said it many times, I can't watch every possible future of him. Cumlin Mirror said helplessly, unless he encountered an unavoidable death fate, but he didn't die. Trapped is also a kind of not dead. Kingpin Sword sneered, if the Sword Master and I are trapped in a secret place forever, you can't predict it in advance? I'm not omnipotent. Cumlin Mirror said angrily, besides, he failed in the sword duel just now, wasn't it because you didn't give him a hint? The opponent has used such a trick of turning 2 swords into 3 swords. It is impossible to beat him. What's the point of giving hints? Kingpin Sword retorted. Okay. Stop arguing. Ling Yunpo interrupted the bickering between the mirror and the sword. It's meaningless to find out who is responsible. Anyway, I'm the victim in the end, how should I deal with this dilemma now? According to the spatial fluctuations, you should be in another space in the Biujing secret realm. Cumlin Mirror comforted him, maybe it triggered a restriction similar to the failure of the trial. No. Kingpin Sword corrected, this restriction was triggered from the moment you stepped into the attic. Don't forget, the guy you faced was much stronger than the one your senior sister faced. It's hard not to admit this. Ling Yunpo said angrily with a gloomy face, so why exactly, this damn Biujing secret realm would target me so much? Cumlin Mirror and Kingpin Sword both thought about it. Is there a possibility? Kingpin Sword guessed, it's because your strength is weaker than your senior sister. No, the next one. Ling Yunpo interrupted it and said firmly. I personally think it's just the opposite. Cumlin Mirror analyzed, at present, it seems that this secret realm is to provide swordsmanship trials, so any adjustment and change to the difficulty of the trial cannot be separated from the strength of the trial taker itself. The reason why your opponent is stronger than senior sister is that the secret realm's judgment of your strength is much higher than that of your senior sister. There is some truth in that. Ling Yunpo said in confusion, but in terms of swordsmanship alone, I am not much better than senior sister. Swordsmanship is certainly a consideration standard, and the rank of the immortal sword itself is not easy to ignore. Cumlin Mirror said. You might as well just report my name directly. Kingpin Sword said angrily. I didn't say that. Cumlin Mirror replied with a chuckle. Huh. Ling Yunpo heard Arjun's implication, saying that this secret realm was so targeted at him, maybe it was related to Kingpin Sword. He paced around again and found that there was indeed no passage in the wall. Ling Yunpo, who was unwilling to give up, knocked here and there with Kingpin Sword, and finally found that the echo of a certain wall was different, the back seemed to be hollow. So he sneered, retreated to a distance, and chanted the spell, sounding the 3 realms, Divine Thunder, Break. A colorless and transparent lightning flashed from his hand. It was the Chi Thunder that was powerful enough to move mountains and fill the sea. It directly hit the opposite wall. Smoke and dust immediately rose up, bricks and stones flew everywhere, and the whole building was shaking wildly. When everything settled, Ling Yunpo saw that the opposite wall had almost completely disappeared, revealing the passage behind. Carefully entering the passage, he looked around carefully, and suddenly heard the female voice again. Shushan Ling Yunpo, with the natural swordbone talent, hereby opens the special trial of floating absolute mounting. Ling Yunpo. It turns out that the restriction discovered my peerless talent and threw me here alone. Confirming that it was not maliciously directed at him, he finally breathed a sigh of relief. In any case, since this is also a trial link, not a trap, I will just let it go and explore. Ling Yunpo walked through the corridor and entered the second closed room. He saw a figure suddenly appear in front of him. Compared with the previous figure in the mist, the figure here was obviously more solid. He could already see the other person's appearance and facial features. He was a thin-faced old man wearing a linen Taoist robe, a high crown and an iron hairpin. His hair and beard were all grey. He looked serious and said coldly, I'm Zhu Lin, and I would like to ask the Swordbone Master to teach me. He bowed and made a long bow. Ling Yunpo quickly returned the greeting. Please teach me. The two bowed to each other, and then urged the fairy swords in their palms to suddenly collide with each other in the air. Outside Fuju Mounting, in the 5 cities, Zisu's pupils suddenly shrank when she saw Ling Yunpo being pierced through the chest by a long sword and suddenly disappeared from the spot. She stood there for a moment, raised her hand suddenly, and slashed the Feon sword at the light curtain in front with all her strength. It was repelled. Obviously, every pavilion is a test. The trial takers who have passed the trial are not allowed to set foot in the trial again. But why would junior brother, forcing himself to calm down, Zisu felt as if his blood was frozen into ice, and all the thoughts in his heart sank. There was no longer any emotion, only pure rationality. First of all, judging from the mechanism of most secret realms, if the trial takers are really killing them, the body will usually not be teleported away on the spot, which is a waste of effort. Secondly, this secret realm is most likely a trial type, that is, it is designed to train the abilities of the trial takers. Then, the monks who fail the trial will most likely be teleported out of the secret realm instead of being killed. It is also very simple to verify, as long as you pass all the levels and finally get out, you will know. Thinking of this, Zisu immediately turned around and walked forward without looking back. Passing through the suspended corridor again, she soon arrived at the second pavilion, and heard a female voice saying, Zisu from Shushan, challenge the second floor of Bayujing. Generate a sword enemy based on your cultivation. Before the fogging front of her condensed into a human figure, Zisu flew to her at high speed, with the Feon sword in her hand carrying blazing flames and brilliant light, slashing forward like a mountain pressing down on her head. The misty human figure only had time to pull out the long sword and hastily block upwards. The cold sword under Zisu's feet suddenly bounced up and pierced its chest directly. Countless ice crystals froze the fog, and Zisu grabbed the handle of the cold sword with his backhand, pulled it hard to the side, and cut the human figure in half cleanly. Chapter 239. Senior sisters and junior brothers, going forward together, Fuji Mounting, in the dungeon. Fuck. 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 Ling Yunpo yelled 3 times in his heart. The swordsmanship of the Taoist priest opposite him was extremely advanced. Whether it was strength, speed, skills or judgment, he was almost better than him in all aspects. Facing the sword head-on, he was beaten by the opponent. Attacking from the back, the opponent saw through it in time. Detouring from the side, the opponent pointed his finger and the sword turned, directly disrupting his moves, and he was restrained instead of being restrained. Ling Yunpo had no choice but to grit his teeth and use the thunder sword to block the opponent's left sword. The Kingpin sword pretended to entangle the opponent's right sword, and suddenly turned around and stabbed the Taoist priest directly. The opponent's right sword had no way to block it, and took the opportunity to stab him hard in the right arm. Ling Yunpo held the tip of the sword with his left hand, bleeding all over his hand, and tried his best to hold it. With his right hand, he used all his strength to activate the true energy, and the Kingpin sword turned into black light and pierced through the chest of the Taoist priest opposite him. It worked. Almost at the same time, the flying sword that pierced his right arm suddenly disappeared, as if it was just an illusion from the beginning. The Taoist's chest was pierced by the Kingpin sword, but he did not fall to the ground and die. He just said indifferently, sword bone, a body of metal. How can it be sharp without being refined in the furnace? As soon as he finished speaking, he disappeared without a trace. Ling Yunpo tensed his expression and cast a universal king in small light technique on his right arm, and the wound healed quickly. What does the Taoist mean? He gritted his teeth and said, it should be telling you not to be afraid of injury, and to fight hard when you need to fight hard. Kunlun Mirror guessed. I think it means that your fighting style is too conservative, and there is a clear suspicion that you were afraid of getting hurt. Kingpin sword also analyzed and said, in fact, you can fight more unrestrainedly, risking some minor injuries in exchange for advantages in the exchange of offensive and defensive. Really? Ling Yunpo stood there in a daze for a while and sighed. The Taoist just now can be regarded as the first powerful enemy he defeated in the true sense after traveling through time. Before this, either they just happened to have the means to restrain the opponent, or they used various tricks to avoid fighting. It can be said that the awareness of risk control has been engraved into the genes in their bones. This is of course inevitable. After all, I must spy in so many sects and play multiple roles. Being cautious is the minimum requirement. However, this inevitably affects my fighting style and even forms an invisible, conscious shackle. That is, don't fight the opponent head-on. Thinking of this, Ling Yunpo suddenly remembered that senior sister and seemed to have said something similar. Although frost has helped me a lot, it has also hindered my improvement in swordsmanship in some aspects. When I encounter a strong enemy, I will subconsciously choose to avoid its edge instead of facing it head-on. Yes, senior sister originally used the same water-based fairy sword as me, and her fighting style is also flexible and changeable. She has encountered similar problems. Why did I only discover it now? I should have thought of it a long time ago. Alas, what is senior sister doing now? Ling Yunpo was thinking about his senior sister, while in the 12th floor of Baiyujing, senior sister was almost going crazy. Starting from the 3rd pavilion, the sword enemies they fought against became more and more powerful. In the 5th pavilion, the sword enemy had already reached the Jindan level, so that no matter how hard Zissou tried, she was still no match for him in the end, and her defense was broken by a sword. However, after the long sword pierced her chest, she was not teleported away from this place like Ling Yunpo, but was reborn at the outer door of the 5th pavilion. Zissou, where is my junior brother? She was furious and urged the flying sword again, smashing the surrounding pavilions. After smashing for a long time as if venting, the surroundings were still intact, Zissou finally calmed down again, but her full chest kept rising and falling. Don't worry, her junior brother will definitely be fine. This is obviously a trial-type secret realm, and you will not deliberately hurt the trial taker. I lost the sword fight in the 5th pavilion, but didn't I die after being killed? But, at least teleport me and him to the same place. Zissou suppressed his anger, and a beautiful frost formed on his face. After standing in silence for a moment, he picked up the Feian sword again and stepped in with murderous intent. At the same time, Ling Yunpo had already followed the tunnel to the 2nd dungeon. The water on the ground suddenly rose and condensed into a huge human figure, about 7 feet tall, as burly as a bull. He bowed and said in a muffled voice, "My name is Wishan. I'm honored to fight with the Swordbone Master. Please teach me. Please teach me." He also bowed in return. After the two of them finished their greetings, Ling Yunpo shot the Kingping sword forward, and a white rainbow pierced the son of the giant. The giant flicked his hand back and knocked the Kingping sword away like a toothpick. Before Ling Yunpo could react, he was hit hard in the abdomen, but the giant rushed out 2 steps and was already in front of him. The palm as big as a palm leaf clenched into a fist, and hit him so hard that he was hunched like a shrimp. Ling Yunpo spat out a mouthful of abdominal fluid, and a horrified thought flashed through his mind. He is actually a physical practitioner. We agreed to fight swords, why don't you play by the rules? Swordbone. Swordbone. The giant man did not take advantage of the situation to pursue him, but just stepped back a few steps and stood still, laughing. The skin is like copper and can't be broken. Only after being hammered thousands of times can you forge 100 times of tempered steel. It means that you should learn how to take a beating in adversity. Kingping sword reminded him hurriedly. I know. Ling Yunpo had just finished answering when he saw the giant man raise his thick leg again and sweep a fierce whip kick. He was so frightened that he ignored the style of a sword immortal and could only roll on the ground and barely avoided it. Before he could get up, he saw the opponent stop the whip kick halfway and change it to a war trample from top to bottom. Ling Yunpo had just stood up at this time, and before he had time to stand firm or step sideways, he had to raise his sword to block in a hurry. As a result, he kicked the sword and the person away, and his back hit the wall heavily, and he didn't know how many ribs were broken. Sliding down the wall like mud, Ling Yunpo sat on the ground in a mess, barely mobilizing his true energy and acting a universal king in small light technique to himself. This spell is worthy at being the first level of Taoism derived from 9 Heavens King Wei entering the true words, and it is perfect for recovering blood. Whether it is bleeding, bruises or fractures, a slap on yourself will recover in a few breaths. While he was healing, the opponent did not take advantage of the victory to pursue, but just watched from the side with his arms folded. So Ling Yunpo could confirm that this level was indeed to train himself how to be beaten. But his experience in this area is almost zero, whether it is Qiu Changtai who pretends to be invincible, Wei Dongliu who is unfathomable, or Luo Yan who relies on magic weapons. How could they have such an experience of being beaten like a dog? So what should we do? Ling Yunpo was anxious. Even if we have to learn to take a beating, how can we be considered to have learned it? We can't just keep getting beaten like this. Maybe it's to train your ability to withstand pressure. Kunlun Mirror guessed, when you are beaten half to death and dying, but can still barely maintain your fighting consciousness, then you have passed this level. Impossible. Next one. I think you can try to reduce the force. Kingping sword said, since being beaten is inevitable, then if you can find a way to reduce the damage, isn't that another feasible idea? Reducing force. Ling Yunpo wondered. You have to know that when sword immortals fight swords, they basically use flying swords to fight flying swords. Once the opponent's flying sword breaks through the defense and kills in front of you, you don't even have time to release the Taoism, and you are basically dead. This false reduction, if you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Mundo Fanfic Novelers, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelers. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 240. Sword heart is dim, sword bones are tired. Zisu stood in the center of the venue, with Feion's sword and Hanlian's sword returning to her at the same time, one on her left and one on her right. She was covered in blood and wounds, and her right hand was limp and hanging down, with several broken bones inside. Right in front of her was the Jinnan monk whose chest was pierced by Feion's sword. The other party's lips opened and closed slightly, and he uttered hoarse words. Sword heart. Sword heart. For whom is the longsword clanging? Just here, before he finished speaking, he was beheaded by Feion's sword, and the subsequent sounds disappeared into the air with the dissipating mist. Zisu pinched the sword formula with her left hand, and was so angry that she almost trembled all over. What does for whom is the longsword clanging mean? It's none of your business. Damn it. She was extremely upset at this time. Even though her reason kept convincing herself that junior brother will be fine, she still couldn't help but worry. What if she found out that her junior brother didn't come out after leaving the secret realm? When she thought of this possibility, she wanted to tear down the entire Bayukoto. After barely calming down again, Zisu was not in a hurry to leave, but quickly sat cross-legged on the ground. First, she took out the pill bottle from her sleeve and took a pill. As the sword fairy of Shushan and the public enemy of all peaks, she had been challenged 18 times in a month, and was seriously injured countless times. As for how to treat her own injuries, she was naturally very skilled. As the medicinal power of the pill dissolved in the meridians, Zisu stretched out her left hand and tapped several major acupoints on her right arm, then straightened and connected the fractures one by one, and urged the true essence to heal them. After recovering from her injuries, she struggled to stand up and walk towards the 6th pavilion. The originally sky-blue Shushan Taoist road was now full of dirty blood and was extremely dirty. Underground environment, Fuji Mountain checkpoint. Almost a day has passed, although Ling Yunpo didn't feel anything. Arjun was calculating the time after all. 10 hours had passed since they met the giant. Although cultivators can go without food, water or sleep, fighting, and getting beaten, for a whole day is naturally a great mental burden. Ling Yunpo had no experience fighting against a physical practitioner before, so he realized how difficult it was. It was too late to cast the Taoist spell, even the fastest thunder spell. He was chanting the spell in his heart, and the opponent had already rushed in front of him. If he cast a spell at close range, he might not cause any harm to others, but be hit and beaten half to death first. In this case, only faster flying swords or magic weapons can be used. Luo Yang couldn't bring his magic weapon with him, so he could only use the Kingping sword and the Lizi sword. The problem is, the physical attack of the two flying swords can't break the opponent's defense. Obviously, the secret realm arranged for the physical practitioner to appear here just to tell himself, just focus on learning how to take a beating, don't think about counter-killing. But what exactly does it mean to learn to take a beating? Only after thousands of blows can steel be forged. Could it be that, as Broken Mirror said, I have to be beaten half to death? Ling Yunpo thought so, and was hit by another heavy punch in the abdomen. After such a long time of beating, his body almost developed an instinctive reaction. Seeing that it was impossible to dodge, he hunched over the moment the fist hit his body. He was thrown out by the force and rolled a few times on the ground to relieve the force. Ling Yunpo got up in a mess and was about to face the next wave of beatings, but he saw that the strong man stood there, folded his arms and nodded, saying, "Wonderful. You are born with sword bones. Your body is as tough as a bamboo branch, and it will not be broken by wind and rain." After saying that, his body turned into water again and collapsed. Ling Yunpo, the other party's last comment, "You'll look really handsome when you were beaten," made him not know whether to be happy or sad for a while. Ling Yunpo used the universal clear sound small light technique again to heal his bruised body, and then he took a short rest before leaving the cave. Stepping into the third room, he saw the water on the ground rising again, gathering into the shape of a human. No, not a human. Why is it a big cat? Meow, the name is Absolute Electricity. The big cat licked its palm and spoke in human language. Jiangyu, Jiangyu, sit and watch the 6 directions and listen to the wind. No matter that, what is it? Ling Yunpo looked at it dully. No matter. The big cat showed a human smile. I really can't remember the poems of you humans. Anyway, this level is to train your ability to use stillness to control movement. Meow, are you ready? I'm going to pounce. Before the voice fell, it suddenly turned into a stream of light and disappeared. Ling Yunpo only felt a strong force come in, and his body didn't even have time to release the force, and was knocked to the ground and rolled several times. He got up in a panic, and saw that the Taoist robe on his chest had been torn, and there were 3 sharp claw marks on it. This demon is so fast. You know, after the marrow is washed, the flying sword is driven with full force and turns into a stream of light. Ling Yunpo thought he could see it clearly. However, before the big cat pounced, even the after image was only a moment, and the movement process was not clear at all. How can I resist and deal with it if I can't even see where the attack came from? Wait, it said use stillness to control movement before, which means that it wants to train me how to deal with it when I can't keep up with the opponent's speed. Ling Yunpo stood up and jumped back, and instantly pressed his back against the wall, so that he didn't have to worry about sneak attacks from behind. The Kingpin sword and the Lizi sword were suspended in front of the left and right, ready to defend against attacks from 3 sides at any time. The big cat, however, just strolled leisurely in the puddles in front, with a strange smile on his face, as if imitating humans. Back against the wall? Meow. It seems like a good idea, but the terrain limits my attack route. What about you? Isn't your evasion direction also reduced? It said leisurely, and suddenly disappeared from the spot again. Ling Yunpo knew that something was wrong, and his chin was hit by another claw. His whole head was thrown back, and the back of his head collided heavily with the wall, knocking him unconscious for a while. Damn it. This stinky cat is right. Since he couldn't keep up with the opponent's speed at all, it didn't make much difference whether the opponent attacked from the front, side or back. But the wall behind him directly blocked the possibility of rolling to unload the force. Ling Yunpo suddenly had an idea and realized that the second level would train him how to unload the force. Could it be because he would be abused in this third level? Thinking about it carefully, the first level trained him to dare to get hurt, wasn't it because he would be beaten in the second level? In other words, this so-called floating mountain trial is actually a complete training course for natural swordbone people. The content of each level is based on each other and is linked together. Dare to get hurt, be skilled in unloading force, and then deal with enemies who can't keep up with the speed, and learn to use stillness to control movement. The smile on the big cat's face suddenly disappeared, because it saw Ling Yunpo taking a few steps forward with his eyes closed, his right hand forming a sword finger to block his chest, his left hand pinching the sword formula and hiding it behind his waist, posing a night battle in all directions posture. The so-called night battle in all directions is a strategy of completely abandoning vision when it is difficult to see in the dark. Warriors rely on hearing and wind sounds, while monks rely on spiritual consciousness. So the big cat's eyes became more and more playful, and it slowly circled around Ling Yunpo, sometimes getting closer, sometimes moving away, as if testing the range of his spiritual perception. Ling Yunpo, however, remained motionless, just closing his eyes. The Kingpin sword blocked in front of him, and the Lizi sword protected behind him, like a still sculpture. Chapter 241 Where is the Chin Sword Master? Another day passed. Ling Yunpo flew backwards again, and the opponent slapped his chest with a claw. But at the moment he was hit, the Kingpin sword and the Lizi sword crossed and slashed, leaving several deep scars on the big cat. The big cat jumped back and rolled in embarrassment, slowly got up, thinking that this guy was too incredible. In just one day, he had already trained the ability to defend and counter-attack, and hit back in the direction of the attack at the moment of being hit. Even if he was born with sword bones, this speed of progress was outrageous. No more fighting. It suddenly growled and jumped back a few steps. You've passed this time. Thank you, senior. Ling Yunpo bowed and asked, may I ask, what is the content of the next test? The big cat looked at him steadily and suddenly showed a sly smile. You should have seen the purpose of the first 3 levels. The main theme is the same. The first level is called adversity, the second level is called difficulties, and the third level, which is my level, is called dangerous situation. You are born with sword bones, resolute and brave. When you encounter adversity, you should fight hard. When you encounter difficulties, you should hold on tenaciously, and when you encounter danger, you should remain calm. I see. Ling Yunpo nodded and said, then the 4th level is, the 4th level, which is also the last level of the Fuchu Mountain Trial, is called desperate situation. The big cat laughed and suddenly turned into falling water and collapsed. Ling Yunpo. So it means encountering adversity and being trapped for a long time and being in danger, extremely dangerous and desperate, right? It's really a progressive relationship. Although the abnormal degree of the previous 3 levels, the final desperate situation is probably so difficult that it will make people vomit blood. But since I'm here, of course I can't retrieve before the last level. What's more, there is no chance to retrieve here. So Ling Yunpo took a short rest, then regrouped and prepared to step into the last level. The 11th floor of Baiyujing. Zisu sat cross-legged in the middle of the floor, silently recovering from his injuries. From the 4th floor to the 11th floor, the realm of the sword enemy has been constantly rising. By the 10th floor, the misty human figure had reached the subtle level of the Jindan realm, and half a foot had stepped into the terrifying cultivation of the Yining realm. Zisu stepped into the field and was killed by the flying sword almost at the first encounter, without any room for fighting back. Fortunately, although these sword enemies are in the Jindan realm, they are all castrated versions. They have a cultivation realm, but they can neither use Taoism nor activate sword spells. They are just the basic attributes of the flying sword, such as strength, speed, flexibility, etc. And the improvement of the exquisiteness of the sword control technique. Due to the huge gap in realm, Zisu was unable to fight the misty figure with swords. Not to mention a head-on collision, even if it was just a rub during the flying sword, the Feian sword or the Hanley sword would be immediately knocked out, like a mantis blocking the wheel, with no room for resistance at all. Zisu had to abandon all tactics and use the assassin-type play to the extreme. First of all, when entering the field, he must use the super move of the Shushan sword Immortal Body and Sword Integration. Because only the speed of the body and sword integration can barely avoid the ordinary attacks of the subtle level sword enemy. Secondly, because the interior of the pavilion is not spacious, the speed of the body and sword integration is too fast, and Zisu can't control such a speed to roam around the field. In other words, he can only rush towards the sword enemy and pursue the fastest one-hit kill. The speed of the sword control of the subtle level sword enemy is so fast that it is almost outrageous. The first attack was avoided by Zisu at the body and sword integration, and there was still time to turn the flying sword back to save. After avoiding the attack, Zisu had to break through the opponent's defense and directly assassinate the main body under the unity of body and sword. If he failed to defeat the opponent in one blow, he would die on the spot. He fought for 2 days on the 10th floor and 3 days on the 11th floor. He died tens of thousands of times in the battle. Finally, only the last building of Baiyujing was left. According to the progressive relationship of strength, the sword enemy there is estimated to have the cultivation of the nascent soul realm. Zisu circulated several big cycles and felt as if the bones of her whole body were about to fall apart. She still hit some uncontrollable dizziness, probably because of excessive blood loss. Her mood was like a volcano about to erupt, and a violent explosion could occur at any time. However, there was some kind of wonderful power that suppressed all her anxiety and impatience, so that the rationality in her mind remained cold and deficient. Even if the sword enemy of the nascent soul realm immediately united with the sword after the battle, I'm afraid there is no possibility of winning. In any case, I can only try it first. After repairing her injuries, Zisu slowly stood up and walked towards the 12th pavilion with her sword in hand. Pushing open the door of the pavilion, she stepped over the threshold and walked into it. She saw a figure solidified by mist rising in front of her. It seemed to be a slender and graceful female monk. The other party drew out a black longsword and looked at her charmingly. Although the facial features were made of mist, Zisu somehow saw the charm on the other party's face. "You're a natural swordsman." The other party sighed quietly. "I haven't seen anyone from outside for a long time. Before the trial, please talk to me first." "What do you want to say?" Zisu said impatiently. Without confirming whether her junior brother was safe, she had no interest in communicating with him. "Who is the Qin sword master of this generation?" the other party asked in a gentle voice. "No more." Zisu shook her head and said, "A long time ago, the whereabouts of the Qin's human sword were unknown." "But why?" the other party asked in surprise. "The last Qin sword master was actually a demon in disguise." Zisu said impatiently. Later, her identity was revealed and she was hunted by the human race. Qin Suming also disappeared during this process. "Really?" the other party sighed again and whispered, "Suming also has a time when he is wrong." She stood there for a moment, and suddenly smiled. "If Suming can be reborn, a simple and straightforward sword fairy like you should be very fond of it." "Are you the projection of the Qin sword master?" Zisu asked vigilantly. "Just one of the generations." The other party smiled. The White Jade Capital and the Trial Palace were the holy places for the cultivation of the human sword fairies in our era. Unfortunately, I don't know when. Gradually no one came. More people will come in the future. Zisu said lightly. I hope so. Please spread the word after you get out, and don't let this place remain sealed. The other party showed a beautiful smile. The sword in my hand, although it is a projection, has sealed a trace of the real breath of Chinsuming. Since you were a natural swordsman, then, as long as you can catch my sword, you'll have passed the trial of Bayou Capital. Of course, it doesn't matter even if you can't capture it, you won't die. You can think it over outside before coming back. Boom. Zisu shook his wrist, and then he controlled the Feon sword. His body and sword became one, and in an instant he rushed straight to the other monk. Facing the wielder of Chinsuming, passive defensor is the stupidest choice. Chapter 242. Sun Sword Master Bragan. Ling Yunpo stepped into the last cave. The accumulated water on the ground suddenly rose and condensed into a human figure in the air. It looked like a thin Taoist priest. Although the specific facial features could not be seen clearly, the other party stood with his hands behind his back, his body as straight as a pine tree, and had a certain temperament of immortals. Your name? No need to ask. The other party said in a clear voice, are you the one born with sword bones? Yes. May I ask the senior? Ling Yunpo was about to say may I ask the senior's name, but suddenly remembered that the senior had just said no need to ask, so he changed his words and asked, may I ask the senior, is this the desperate pass? Yes. The Taoist priest opened his arms, and the accumulated water under his feet suddenly boiled. In the surging water, a white gold fairy sword slowly rose, and the hilt was lifted into the Taoist priest's hand, and he grasped it lightly. As he grasped the hilt, the water that formed his arm began to boil violently, which made Ling Yunpo stunned. What level of fire fairy sword could have such a terrifying high temperature? This sword is a projection of the Sun True Darkness sword, and it contains a trace of its true breath. The Taoist said calmly, you should have heard of the name of Sun True Darkness, right? I have heard of it. Ling Yunpo said expressionlessly, but he was shocked in his heart. Sun True Darkness sword? What the hell? Even if it is just a projection, it is still Sun True Darkness, one of the supreme immortal swords. What's more, it contains a trace of true breath, let alone a trace, even if it is half a point, a quarter, or even an eighth of a breath in it. How can I defeat it? I haven't even formed a golden elixir yet. The last desperate level of your trial is too outrageous. It's better to just face me and kill me with a thunderbolt. Descend the key and split the light, enlighten the darkness. The Taoist crossed the sword, his eyes swept across the blazing luster on it, his eyes gradually became fanatical, transformed the in-soul, and mount the karma. This Chinsuming was forged by Xi, the ancestor of the human race, from a ray of innate pure energy that was extremely yang and extremely strong when the heaven and the earth were first separated. On the day the sword is completed, there will be no rivals in the world. Just brag. The Kingping sword complained, what do you mean by invincible? Don't we still have the Chinsuming sword? Shut up, Kingping. Ling Yunpo said in despair, they are holding the Chinsuming sword, you can brag all you want, anyway, we can't beat them. Ordinary cultivators, at your level, will never be able to withstand its attack. The Taoist raised the Chinsuming sword above his head and suddenly laughed out loud, but you are a natural sword bone, so you have the honor of challenging it. Come on. As long as you can withstand my sword, you have passed the desperate level here. The other party held the Sun True Destiny and waved it vigorously to the side. Suddenly, all the water under his feet boiled up, and the air was filled with a burning smell. Even the light was distorted in the rising heat. Feeling the heat wave coming towards him, Ling Yunpo felt helpless. Can I refuse? No, then what can you say? He had to squint his eyes and grab the Kingping sword in his hand. The true essence flowed on the sword for a moment and turned into water. Suddenly, he felt much cooler. I have to fight to the death, Kingping, Lady Li. Go, go, go. Lady Li sword shouted with fearlessness. Don't hold back, just go all out. Kingping sword also suggested. Ling Yunpo didn't say anything, but instantly merged his body and sword, and turned into a stream of light with the Kingping sword, rushing towards the Taoist. In the 1,000-foot valley, in the cave. Several Jin and Zenran from Kunlun have landed with the old Taoist. I saw that the original entrance to the secret realm has been replaced by rocks again. It's here. The old Taoist pointed to the front and said, at the time, the two Shushan Taoist friends used the magic of thunder attributed flying swords to blast the rocks from here and successfully entered the secret realm. The Jin and Sinrun looked at each other for a moment, and then a middle-aged female nun stood up and pulled out the copper hairpin from her crown. The Five Thunders orthodox method, due to the great risks and hidden dangers of its practice, is now basically no longer practiced by cultivators in cunning, but there are many magic weapons that seal the thunder method. The female nun stabbed the copper hairpin forward, and several purple thunderbolts appeared out of thin air and blasted towards the rocks in front. With a loud bang, the rocks separated, revealing the entrance to the light film inside. There really is a secret realm here. Several Kunlun's Hinrun exchanged glances again, and each of them could read the joy in each other's eyes. Before they could speak, there was a sudden fluctuation on the light film. Then, Zisu stepped out from inside and looked at the Kunlun cultivators outside with a slightly surprised expression. "Are you a Shushan disciple?" asked the middle-aged nun who made the first move. Zisu did not say anything, but nodded to acknowledge it. She quickly scanned the surroundings, and her mood suddenly fell into an ice cave. "No, junior brother." The light film fluctuated again, and Lin Yunpo stepped out of it. "Junior brother!" Zisu shouted in surprise, and hurried over to hold his hand to check if he had any residual injuries. "Senior sister, I'm fine." Ling Yunpo patted her hand, and his eyes fell on the Kunlun's Hinrun in the distance, and he immediately said in his heart, "Fuck." The Hinrun Shengxiao of the Discipline Hall, as well as the Hinrun Zikui and the Hinrun Sanyan, how did these three get here? Seeing the old Taoist standing respectfully beside him, Ling Yunpo immediately guessed the answer, stepped forward and bowed, saying, "Shushan Ling Yunpo, meet the three seniors." The atmosphere on the scene, which was originally a bit stiff because Zisu ignored it, eased again as Ling Yunpo bowed. Sanyan Hinrun was a man of wide social connections, and he immediately tried to smooth things over with a smile. "I heard that there are 4 sword immortal geniuses in Shushan, and their names together form broken mountains and divided seas, shattered moon and broken clouds. You are the sword immortal Poon among them, right? Shouldn't it be called Ling Poon?" The middle-aged nun, Shengxiao Hinrun from the Discipline Hall, frowned and asked suspiciously. "It is indeed Ling Yunpo." Sanyan Hinrun laughed. "Maybe it's just that Shushan people call it for the sake of parallelism. In short, these two should be genuine Shushan disciples without a doubt." Ling Yunpo could only laugh awkwardly, but Zisu was a little angry and raised his eyebrows slightly. "Do you two have time to answer a few questions for us?" Shengxiao Hinrun stretched out his hand to invite them. "We have been away from the mountain for a long time. If we don't return to the mountain, I'm afraid that the elders of the sect will come to look for us," Zisu said lightly. This was a silent hint to the other party that our coming to Yangzhou Qiuju County was reported by Shushan long ago. If we were silenced here and suddenly disappeared, and Kunlun discovered the secret realm here in Tianmu Mountain, Shushan would definitely guess the connection. Shengxiao Hinrun heard the fear in her words and smiled. "Don't worry, the secret realm here exists. We have informed the head of your Yuzheng sect and the head of Kuchuandu of Yu King Temple. How to develop it in the future, the 3 sects have to discuss together and come up with a charter. We came here just to explore the secret realm first." The 3 sects discussed together. Zisu opened his eyes wide, with a puzzled expression. Ling Yunpo immediately guessed the reason. He and his senior sister had entered the secret realm, and Shushan would definitely not be able to hide it. Tianmu Mountain is located in Qiuju County, Yangzhou. According to the legal division of the sect, it belongs to the sphere of influence of Pengliu King Temple. Instead of trying to tyrannically take it all, they intervened as discoverers and tried to jointly develop or even led the development of the secret realm. This is precisely because Kunlun Tai King sect is the leader of the orthodox sect. "That's great." Ling Yunpo agreed and said with a smile, "Senior, if you have any questions, I will tell you everything I know." Senior sister didn't know who the real person Shengxiao was, so she was naturally wary and daunted. "But I know that this real person is one of the most upright people in Kunlun, so I can be assured when dealing with him." Chapter 243. A Jin, who are we following? There is not much to explain about Bayou Capital. Ling Yunpo only described the scene and mechanism once, and the 3 Kunlun monks were immediately able to be sure that it was a secret realm where the ancient human sword cultivators conducted trials. As for why Bayou Capital mysteriously disappeared in ancient times, it can only be said that from ancient times to ancient times, from ancient times to modern times, there are too many things lost in history, and Bayou Capital is not the only one. However, the projections of the last Sun Sword Master and Shin Sword Master made the 3 Kunlun monks ask several times. After learning that it was indeed just a projection, they also sighed in disappointment, although it was expected. As for how the two defeated the projection of the Swordmaster and what benefits they gained from the trial of Bayou Capital, these are relatively sensitive private topics, and it is not easy for them to ask as external real people. Soon, the head of Yuzheng in Shushan, the head of Khuandu in Penglai, and several elders in their respective sects also arrived at Kaiansan Valley on their swords. You did a good job this time. The head of Yuzheng looked at the two and said concisely, after this matter is returned to the sect, you must not mention it to anyone else. Understood. Ling Yunpo responded immediately. Take it. The head of Yuzheng took out 2 tokens and threw them to the two. Ling Yunpo took it and saw that it was the Locking Demon Tower Order. He was immediately overjoyed. The so-called Locking Demon Tower Order, as the name suggests, any Shushan disciple can hold this order and enter the Locking Demon Tower once at any time. It is the special contribution award of the sect of the Shanking Temple of Shushan, and it will only be awarded to Shushan disciples who have made great contributions. As for the rich resources in the Locking Demon Tower, there is no need to mention it here. Even the Golden Core Sword Immortal can only enter the tower once a year. If the two can't use this order, even if they sell it to the elders in the sect, they will definitely not lose money. Thank you, head. Ling Yunpo thanked sincerely. Sister An of course also knew the importance of this order. After a slight hesitation, she followed Ling Yunpo to salute. Go back. The head of Yuzheng didn't care and just waved his hand. The 3 sects will have to negotiate later, and the 2 foundation-building disciples naturally don't need to participate in it. So the 2 of them said goodbye and left, flying on their swords. Watching the water, Kumlinjing suddenly said, your senior sister An seems to have awakened the talent of a natural sword heart. Ling Yunpo. He looked at Anzisu in disbelief, thinking that even my natural sword bone is maintained by playing Ling Yunpo for 12 hours a day. How can my senior sister awaken the talent of a natural sword heart after going to Bayou Zhejiang once? Your senior sister was born with it. Kingping Sword said dimly, you borrowed it by cheating, so of course it's different. Ling Yunpo didn't want to pay attention to this stinky sword, and just asked Jing. Do you want to scan and burn it? Of course. Kumlinjing said embarrassedly, I only burned the sword bone here, not the sword heart. It would be best if we can get a pair. Are you some noble player with a complete atlas? Ling Yunpo complained, how do you do it specifically? The easiest way, of course, is to practice dual cultivation. Kumlinjing was rudely interrupted by Ling Yunpo before he finished speaking. Shut up, change another one. Is the sword master a pure little scholar? Kingping Sword imitated his tone and complained. When you were practicing dual cultivation, her whole body and mind are completely open to you without reservation, and her emotions are highly active, so it is most effective to record it. Kumlinjing sighed, if that doesn't work, talking about love is also a way. Why? Ling Yunpo was a little dumbfounded. When you're recording the Inlong bloodliner, didn't you only need 1 drop of blood? Why do you have to talk about love when it comes to senior sister? For bloodliner talents, 1 drop of blood is enough. Kumlinjing said patiently, take your junior sister's Yu as an example. If she awakens the Phoenix bloodliner, you only need 1 drop of blood. Of course, asking her for blood directly will definitely arouse suspicion. It's better to practice dual cultivation with her and naturally take her virgin blood. Why are you always thinking about your dual cultivation? Ling Yunpo said with a smile, what about the natural swordsman heart? The natural Tao heart belongs to the state of mind talent, which has nothing to do with taking blood. Kumlinjing sighed, what you need to capture to record the natural swordsman heart is a trace of breath naturally emitted by the swordsman heart. Breath. Ling Yunpo seemed to be thinking about something. That's right. Kumlin Mirror said patiently, under the moonlight, the heart is trembling, and the emotions can't be restrained. Whether it is a natural sword heart, a 7-orifice exquisite heart, a clear heart of Taoism, or any other state of mind-related talents, I can capture and record them. So Qiu Chang Tian's clear heart of Taoism was also stolen by you when you spied on others' love affairs? Ling Yunpo asked with a sneer. What do you mean by spying on others' love affairs? Kumlin Mirror said angrily, at the time, he had already been heartbroken, and he went through untold hardships to find me here, begging me to use my time-space shuttle technique to go back and see that person again. Oh? Ling Yunpo's eyes lit up, so there really is an illusion. Yo-yo, tell me in detail. Kingping Sword also became curious. No more talk. Kumlinjing knew he had said something wrong, and waved his hand, saying, it's all ancient history, I won't joke with you about how the deceased was when he was alive. Anyway, just remember that I never stole talent from anyone, it's always been a mutually beneficial exchange. What can you bring out in exchange? Ling Yunpo asked in a deep voice when he heard that there was something to exchange. As for which unlucky guy Arjun got this Toksin Tong Min from, he didn't care at all. If you can let me engrave the natural sword heart, I will give you a secret method. Kumlin Jing said calmly, this secret method needs to be used with the natural sword bone. That's right, it was given to me by the person who was born with the sword bone. In simple terms, it is to burn the essence of the natural sword bone, which can obtain a fast regeneration state for 1 hour. As long as you are not beaten to pieces by the opponent in an instant, no matter how serious the injury is, it can be recovered instantly. Ling Yunpo was stunned for a moment, and couldn't help but widen his eyes. No matter how serious the injury is, it can be recovered instantly. This thing is more like invincible and immortal than rapid regeneration. However, the price that Arjun said was burning the true essence made him instinctively feel uneasy. The so-called burning of the true essence is to damage the origin of the natural sword bone. As if seeing his concerns, Kumlin Jing explained lightly, after about 2 or 3 times of use, the natural sword bone will become a dry bone. How can this be done? Ling Yunpo frowned and said, if it is weak for a period of time, it is acceptable, but this damage to the origin is irreversible damage. Wake up, idiot, do you have a natural sword bone? King Ping Sword couldn't bear it anymore and reminded Ling Yunpo, yes, where did I get the natural sword bone? Didn't Arjun simulate it with his spiritual power? Your natural sword bone consumes my spiritual power. Kumlin Jing sighed and said, the so-called burning of the true essence is actually just consuming my precious spiritual power. Help me to burn the natural sword heart, I will teach you to use this method, and provide an opportunity to consume spiritual power. I see. Ling Yunpo nodded. In other words, as long as I have a love affair with senior sister Am, I can get a precious chance to save my life. This deal is worth it, I can do it. No, wait a minute. Even if I don't make this exchange, if I really encounter some fatal danger, can Arjun still not save me? Of course not. In that case, wouldn't it be a waste to engrave her talent? Wow, your idea is simply inhuman. Kumlin Jing said in horror, do I owe you, Cheng Yuan's you? You rely on your status as a savior to force me to save you, but you are unwilling to do me a little favor, right? Calm down, Jing. Seeing that Jing was about to break on the spot, Ling Yunpo quickly changed his words and said righteously, what I mean is, with our close relationship, what is the point of talking about interest exchange? It's so formal. Shame on you. The last few times you saved my life, did you ask me for a price? This time it's my turn to repay you and engrave your natural sword heart for you. How can I ask for benefits in return? What you said this time is more humane. Kumlin Jing's tone eased a little, but there was still some anger left, and he said relentlessly, what interest exchange did you mention just now? Humph, I'm so angry. Who mentioned the interest exchange first? Ling Yunpo stared. Of course you mentioned it first. Kumlin Jing didn't think about it. That, yo. King Ping Sword suddenly said, it seems that you mentioned it first. Kumlin Mirror. Be time. Fairy, please stop making trouble. Daily text, single female led, high sugar and no knife, dog food is full. Chapter 244 Nonsense. Arriving at King Luo Peak of Shushan Mountain, the two returned to the Taoist temple for a short rest. Although they seem to have returned unscathed during this trip to Baiying, they actually died countless times in there. Even though the habit of killing without blinking an eye of the mowing sword immortal was almost broken by tens of thousands of defeats and deaths in battle, and it was all supported by some unspeakable obsession. As soon as he returned to the Taoist temple, he immediately went to get a pot of monkey wine to reward himself. Ling Yunpo followed behind her, wanting to say something but stopping, Usually, when chatting with the senior sister, he could flirt anytime and anywhere, and he could also appreciate the senior sister's slightly shy stare. This really wanted to talk about love, but he didn't know where to start. In the final analysis, Ling Yunpo was not ready to take responsibility for the senior sister. After all, he was a spy, and one day he would be exposed, and it was impossible for him to accompany the senior sister to the end hand in hand. However, senior sister is gentle, protective, and considerate. She is willing to make unlimited efforts for him, and even risk her life to protect him. If Ling Yunpo deceives and betrays such a senior sister, even if he can deceive his conscience, he is afraid of being struck to death by a thunderbolt when he is going through the heavenly tribulation. Kumlin Mirror listened to his inner monologue without saying anything, just watching leisurely. It's okay, Yuan Shui, follow your heart. Don't worry about disappointing senior sister, because there will never be such an opportunity. Ling Yunpo said irritably. Jin, I remember when I first joined King Luo Peak, you seemed to tell me not to harm senior sister Anne. How could that be? Kunlun Mirror asked in surprise. It was Qiu Chang who made an engagement with junior sister Zhu. What does it have to do with me, Ling Yunpo? Ling Yunpo reminded. King Ping Sword screamed, and it was unknown what it was exclaiming about. Ling Yunpo was too lazy to pay attention to it. Kunlun Mirror fell silent. At this point, it can't say I was a pure single female protagonist party at the beginning. Now you forcefully insult the single female protagonist, but in fact you are ungrateful and ungrateful. I hope you will be caught and killed by them. After thinking hard for a moment, it stammered. After all, senior sister Anne also likes you. You also found out? Ling Yunpo asked in surprise. Is it difficult to find out? King Ping Sword laughed and said, I think she is just deceiving herself, using senior sister's love for junior brother to cover it up. If you work harder and poke through that layer of window paper, she will definitely not be able to deny it. I think you two are waiting to see me laugh, Ling Yunpo said suspiciously. How could it be? No. The mirror and the sword quickly explained. Ignoring them, Ling Yunpo went around to the backyard and saw Nzisu drunk in the pavilion, her graceful figure leaning against the pavilion pillar, her temperament elegant. Speaking of the figure of the senior sister, we have to mention that when she returned covered in blood, Ling Yunpo once helped her heal her wounds. The curves were so well proportioned that he was simply amazed. Unfortunately, since then, senior sister Anne has never returned with injuries again. Ling Yunpo suspected that she did not stop fighting with others, but found a place to hide after fighting, and came back after recovering from her injuries secretly. Entering the pavilion, Ling Yunpo touched the senior sister's forehead. It was a little hot, and the blushing did not seem to be fake. It seemed that she was really drunk. Alcohol itself is not delicious. Many people like the drink alone, not because they like the spicy taste, but because they like the feeling of being busy and forgetting all troubles after the alcohol is on the top. I think senior sister Anne is the same. According to some information Ling Yunpo learned, Su Jian was also said to be an old alcoholic, so senior sister Anne was probably led astray by her father. Feeling the weight on his forehead, Nzisu opened his eyes dazedly. Junior brother. Why is senior sister drinking alone here? Ling Yunpo didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Is there something bothering you? When this was mentioned, Nzisu suddenly burst into tears, hugged Ling Yunpo who was caught off guard, and sobbed. Junior brother, senior sister is sorry for you. Senior sister shouldn't have bad intentions, Ling Yunpo. At this time, I don't know how many question marks I need to use to fully express the confusion on his face. Bad intentions? What bad intentions? Is senior sister going to kill me? Before he could ask a question, senior sister Anne hugged his neck and buried him in her chest, and suddenly he couldn't even breathe smoothly. Sister really doesn't want you to leave. Under the influence of alcohol, her tone was mournful, intermittent, sobbing, and nagging. The situation in King Luo Peak is indeed very bad, but sister really doesn't want you to leave. Speaking of the latter, it sounds more like a spoiled child than a rogue. Ling Yunpo took some effort to break free from the fact, and then hugged sister with his backhand, patting her back to comfort her, but a trace of suspicion flashed in his eyes. Is there a possibility that sister is actually pretending to be drunk and taking the opportunity to confess to me? No way. Kunlun Mirror said, I scanned it, she is really drunk. Oh. Ling Yunpo sighed, and saw Nzisu blushing, struggling out of his arms, turning around and hugging the pillar again, crying. Master, I am sorry for Master, I have bad thoughts about junior brother. As she spoke, she gradually began to sob and stopped talking. Since the senior sister is already drunk, that means, what she is saying now is the truth. Ling Yunpo walked around behind her and asked in a low voice. Tell me what you think is going on. I originally only wanted to be his senior sister. Nzisu's eyes were hazy with drunkenness, and her voice gradually became lower. But I don't want to always be just his senior sister. Then what do you want to be? Ling Yunpo asked patiently. In response to him, the sound of even breathing, the senior sister had already fallen asleep hugging the pillar. Oh, really? Ling Yunpo stared at the defenseless sleeping face of senior sister Anne, with mixed feelings in his heart, and he couldn't tell whether he was happy or guilty. Send the senior sister back to her room first. The next morning, Nzisu woke up slowly from the bed, only to feel a severe pain in her head, as if she was still hungover. She secretly circulated her true energy and flowed it through the many acupoints on her head, and her mind immediately became clear. Covering her head, she recalled what happened yesterday and couldn't help but groaning with her head in her hands. I only remember that I had accumulated too much pressure in Beijing. After returning, I drank a lot of wine in the pavilion by the stream. Later, I even forgot to use my true energy to dissolve the alcohol. I was drunk. As for who sent me back, it goes without saying. Well, when my junior brother found me, I didn't say anything nonsense, did I? Thinking of this, Zisu had the urge to bang her head against the wall. Being drunk and making a fool of yourself is a small matter, but saying nonsense in front of my junior brother and losing the dignity of my senior sister is a big deal. Zisu really has no confidence in her drinking quality after being drunk. She slightly tidied her clothes and then walked out of the Taoist temple. Seeing Ling Yunpa practicing sword in the open space in front of the Taoist temple, Zisu subconsciously straightened her face and planned to make up for yesterday's misbehavior. She said majestically, "Junior brother, your swordsmanship is not bad, but there are still some areas that can be improved, such as," she commented on it in a messy way, and saw Ling Yunpo staring at her with a strange expression. "Junior brother, what are you doing?" Zisu wanted to act like a senior sister and reprimand him seriously, but her voice softened involuntarily. "Senior sister, you are so beautiful." Ling Yunpo smiled. "Ah, really?" Zisu said in a panic, only to find that she got out of bed in a hurry and forgot to comb her hair and put on her hairpin. Her long black hair fell smoothly on her shoulders like a waterfall. She quickly covered her face and turned around, hurried back to the Taoist temple, and said shyly, "I'll go wash up." Chapter 245. Shouan Dashan. Before departure. Before the news of Beijing spread inside Shushan, King Luo Peak welcomed a group of new guests. "Is this King Luo Peak?" Juan Fanhai asked in surprise. "Doesn't match your impression," Yuan Jinyu asked with a smile. "I thought it would be some dangerous place," Juan Fanhai said casually, and when he saw Ling Yunpo coming out of the Taoist temple, he immediately shut up. "Brother Lin, Brother Juan, Sister Yuan." Ling Yunpo clasped his fists and saluted one by one. "I haven't seen you for a long time, but your sword skills have improved again," Lin Yuanzhen said approvingly. "Brother Lin, how do you know that my skills have improved?" Ling Yunpo asked in surprise. "In the past, my junior brother was very sharp, but today he is very reserved, so I know that he has improved," Lin Yuanzhen explained. "Indeed." Juan Fanhai looked at him in surprise. When a scholar has been away for 3 days, he should be treated with new eyes. Ling Yunpo laughed and invited everyone to sit in the temple for a while. The three of them came here to discuss the southern expedition. Although the sword immortals are keen on single combat, they cannot stand up to the devil monk's habit of forming teams to fight. Therefore, Shushan has also made a rule that during the southern expedition, the foundation building disciples need to travel in teams, usually 4 to 6 people in a team. In previous years, Lin, Juan, and Yuan basically formed a team together, probably because the strength of other foundation building disciples could not keep up with them, and they were often a burden in the team, so it was better to have fewer people. This year, due to the care of the Yuan family's ancestor, Ling Yunpo and Zisu also joined them, so the 3-person team naturally expanded to a 5-person team. At the same time, because the two had never participated in the southern expedition before, Lin Yuanzhen and others came here specially this time to explain the basic situation of the southern expedition to the two. Of course, the main purpose is to let Ling Yunpo get familiar with it. The monster of the mowing sword immortal does not need intelligence, just explode and kill when encountering the enemy. "Junior brother Lin, let me tell you, this is how the 100,000 mountains are." After sitting down in the hall, Lin Yuanzhen explained the information he knew about the 100,000 mountains in detail to Ling Yunpo. Ling Yunpo listened carefully, and his heart was about to vomit blood. Wei Dongliu had already heard this information from Long Xiaqi and the others, and the details were much more detailed than yours. What about the monsters in the mountains, the miasma mechanism, and the ruins in which areas have been explored? Ling Yunpo almost fell asleep after listening to it, but he had to force himself to stay awake and pretend to memorize it seriously. Fortunately, Zisu finally came out of the inner room and interrupted Lin Yuanzhen's explanation. "Let's not talk about other ruins for now. Which ruins can improve the Purple Mansion and promote the efficiency of the Transformation Mansion?" "I was just about to explain it in detail," Lin Yuanzhen said seriously. "Among these 100,000 mountains, there are currently 2 Purple Mansion secret realms that have been discovered by my Shushan. One is exclusive to my Shushan, called Langan Cave, which contains 10,000-year-old stone milk, and drinking it can improve the Purple Mansion. How much skill is equivalent to it?" Ling Yunpo asked seriously. One sip can increase your strength by 1 year. Juan Hai said in a deep voice, but the stone milk is poisonous, so don't drink too much. It all depends on your physique. Ordinary cultivators can only drink 10 sips at most. If they drink more, their faces will turn purple and their limbs will feel like they are filled with lead. Yuan Jinu also added, but if you only drink 1 sip every year, you can slow down the growth of your body's endurance, and the maximum limit can be extended to 40 years. Ling Yunpo and Zisu looked at each other and naturally understood what Yuan Jinu meant. If you drink the stone milk all at once, you can only gain 10 years of strength at most, and then your body will reach its limit. But if you only drink 1 sip every year and come back next year, you can continue to increase your strength to nearly 40 years under the steady flow, which is undoubtedly much more cost-effective than the former. However, Yuan Jinu specifically mentioned this for another reason. The southern expedition to the 10,000 mountains is different from the Shushan competition. Not every disciple can participate. Its essence is the division of resources by the top leaders, involving the game and compromise between the forces of the various peaks, and King Luo Peak is an absolute weakness in this area. This year, thanks to the favor of the Yuan family's ancestor, the two of them were qualified to participate in the southern expedition, but they may not have such an opportunity next year. Therefore, it is not realistic for Lin Yulanzhen and the others to go to the southern expedition every year to drink a sip. If there is no chance to join the southern expedition in the future, it is better to drink enough at once and squeeze out the benefits to the maximum. The reason why Yuan Jinu reminded them of this is that they want the two to discuss it carefully and figure out how to choose. Thank you, Senior Sister Yuan. Ling Yunpo bowed his hands in thanks. In addition to this Langan Cave, there is another mist forest, which is said to be able to increase the power of the Transformation Palace. Lin Yulanzhen continued. It is said. Zisu frowned and asked. Not every cultivator who enters the mist forest can perfect the Purple Palace. Juan Hai said coldly, only 1 in 10 or 12 have such an adventure, and basically they can't tell what adventure they encountered. That's rare. Ling Yunpo said with a smile, could it be that a Transformation Palace cultivator could lose consciousness when entering this mist forest? That's right. Yuan Jinu nodded and said. Everyone. No consciousness. Zisu frowned and said, what should we do if we encounter an accident? At present, it seems that there are basically no cultivators who enter the misty forest who have died or disappeared. When the time comes, they will wake up outside the forest. Lin Yulanzhen explained, it's just that some people have increased their power in the Transformation Palace, and some have gained nothing. The head of Yuzheng once went into the misty forest alone to explore. After coming out, he said that there was basically no problem, so everyone was relieved. Ling Yunpo and Zisu understood. Since the head of the sect had investigated and said that there was no problem, there should be no problem. But there is a key problem with the misty forest. Juan Hai suddenly said, every year after the miasma retreats, the location of the misty forest is uncertain. You mean? Ling Yunpo immediately realized. If they appear in the territory controlled by our Shushan, then there will be no problem. If they appear in the core hinterland of the demonic path, then there is basically no need to think about it. Juan Hai continued, but if they're within the sphere of influence of both sides, it is almost certain to cause a bloody storm. Will there be Jindan cultivators involved? Ling Yunpo asked in a low voice. It's hard to say. Lin Yulanzhen shook his head and said, the misty forest is too large. If we send Jindan cultivators to patrol the periphery and specifically kill the Watful level cultivators of the opposite camp, the efficiency is too low. Inefficiency means that they will not do it on a large scale, but whether they will send some idle real people over is hard to say. If you win the grand prize in the misty forest, you can improve your Watfu skills by 30 years. Yuan Jinu said at last, but the greater possibility is that you will get nothing. Fortunately, we can participate every year and try our luck, so it is also a must for us. Among the remaining ruins, some have been explored clearly and can be used to obtain spiritual herbs, magical herbs, monster materials and other resources. There are also a large number of areas that have not been explored yet, and we don't know what ruins and adventures are in them. What do you think should be the focus this time? Although this question was asked to the two of them, it was actually directed at Senior Sister Anne. Zisu did not answer immediately, but cast his eyes on his junior brother. After a moment of hesitation, Ling Yunpo said without hesitation, of course it is the latter. Chapter 246. The True Way of the Sword. After talking about the situation in the 10,000 mountains, everyone started chatting and building relationships. After all, if they were to form a team together, it was necessary to understand each other. Lin Yuanzhen, Juan Fan Hai and Yuan Zhenyu were all quite familiar with each other because they had to form a team to march south every year. As for Ling Yunpo and Zizou, they could only say that they were more familiar with Lin Yuanzhen, while they had more experience of fighting each other with Juan Fan Hai and Yuan Zhenyu. Now they had to cooperate and collaborate, so they had to deal with it separately and get to know each other again. As a middleman familiar to both sides, Lin Yuanzhen took on the responsibility of leading the communication. He first commented on the characteristics of the Jufeng swordsmanship schools, and then talked about the 7-killing swordsmanship of King Luo Peak. The first word for this 7-killing swordsmanship is fast. Lin Yuanzhen summarized, the only swordsmanship in the world that cannot be defeated is fast. I do have some objections to this point. Yuan Zhenyu thought, instead of saying fast, it's better to say compete for the first place. Ling Yunpo was a little surprised. This senior sister Yuan had a good eye. That's right. Juan Fan Hai also agreed with this opinion. The 7-kill sword technique is famous for its speed, but it is not about speed alone, but rather emphasizes being the first. Junior brother Juan, are you remembering that you're beaten up by junior brother Ling during the Shushan competition? Yuan Zhenyu smiled, covering his mouth with his hands. He didn't even have time to display his sword skills. Juan Fan Hai's mouth twitched, and after a moment he said seriously, "Humph, starting late and arriving first, defeating the strong with the weak, these are the characteristics of the 7-kill sword technique. I was defeated by junior brother Lin in the past, and after I went back I thought about it carefully and concluded that one of the reasons was that I underestimated the enemy, but more importantly, it was because junior brother Ling's swordsmanship was so fast, which really brought the advantages of the 7-kill sword technique to the fullest extent." His words were both to whitewash himself and to praise Ling Yunpo, so there was no need for everyone to refute. Speaking of competing for the first place, senior sister An's swordsmanship has probably reached the pinnacle. Lin Yuanzhen suddenly said, not only can she win the first place, but she can also quickly consolidate her advantage. Indeed. Juan Fan Hai also echoed, in the past, there was a saying among the peaks. When fighting with senior sister An, you must never give in. Otherwise, if you give in, there will be no room for competing for the first place. Although I don't want to admit it, senior sister An's swordsmanship is indeed better than mine. Yuan Zhenyu said with a fake smile, with senior sister An in the team this time, there will be no variables in the southern expedition. Everyone flattered her, but Zizou did not respond at all, which made everyone feel a little embarrassed. To be precise, she had never encountered such a situation before, and she didn't know how to respond, so she simply kept silent. The atmosphere was silent for a while. Ling Yunpo was about to say something to smooth things over when he suddenly heard Yuan Zhenyu ask, I heard that senior sister An plans to inherit the Taoist tradition of Kishishinron and practice the love flow, right? Then who will be the Taoist partner for love flow, junior brother Lin? This question was so direct that Lin Yuanzhen and Juan Fan Hai both glared at her, signaling her not to say such embarrassing words, but their ears could not help but prick up, waiting to hear how Zizou would answer. Zizou remained expressionless and silent. Then her neck began to turn red, slowly spreading to her cheeks. Ahem. Ling Yunpo suddenly stood up, interrupting everyone's sight, and said, Senior brother Juan, I want to fight with you. Juan Fan Hai. Okay. He also stood up immediately and sneered, obedience is worse than respect. The fact that Ling Yunpo unexpectedly eliminated him from the Shushan competition was like a fishbone stuck in his throat, which always made Juan Fan Hai feel a little uncomfortable. But if he went to challenge him again, it would seem too deliberate, so Juan Fan Hai put his revenge plan aside for the time being. I didn't expect Ling Yunpo to come to him today. The two hit it off and left the Taoist temple to compete. Lin Yuanzhen and Yuan Zhenyu also hurriedly followed, turning to look at Zizou's face, but saw that her face had already returned to normal, and she looked completely calm, completely different from the evil ghost who was always looking for someone to threaten during the previous Shushan competition. Is he sure that Ling Yunpo will not lose? Yuan Zhenyu was thoughtful, and Lin Yuanzhen's face changed slightly. The sword fight started soon. Juan Fan Hai pinched the sword formula quickly, and the Kangtai sword shot out like lightning, heading straight for Ling Yunpo's chest. Attack. He obviously learned the lesson from the last Shushan competition this time, and did not intend to give Ling Yunpo any chance to entangle, and directly attacked. Ling Yunpo's face did not change, and the thunder sword blocked in front of him to resist the attack of the Kangtai sword. At the moment of the collision of metal and iron, Juan Fan Hai realized that something was wrong. The force coming from the opponent's sword was even stronger than his own. The force of a flying sword depends on only two factors: the properties of the flying sword itself, and the strength of the sword immortal's true essence. The Thunder Sword and the Kantai Sword are both gold-based flying swords known for their swiftness and sharpness, and they do not have much bonus in terms of strength. In other words, the opponent's true essence at this time seems to be far stronger than his own. This thought flashed through Juan Van Hai's mind, and he saw a flash of black light in front of him, and the Kingping sword was already cutting towards his head. He quickly pulled out the Infiltrating sword, trying to block the attack of the Kingping sword. There was another sound of metal and iron hitting each other, and the Kaienjin sword could not withstand the impact force and was violently shaken away by the Kingping sword. Before he could come to his senses, the Kingping sword was already on his neck. Juan Van Hai. He frowned, stretched out his finger and gently pushed the Kingping sword away, wondering, what kind of magic is this? Swordsmanship. Ling Yunpo waved his hand casually, and the Kingping sword automatically flew back to his palm. 7 killing swordsmanship, can it increase the power of flying swords? Juan Van Hai looked at Lin Yuanzhen who was watching. Being able to directly shake his Infiltrating sword away is not something that can be done by true Yuan vigorous. They are both at the water level, but have not yet formed a pill. How strong can they be? Lin Yuanzhen also looked solemn, shook his head and said, I have never seen it. It's a bit like the power-generating method of the Shirdoyo Jiaisha sword, but it is definitely not it. The Jiaisha sword has 3 levels of power, and the power is stronger than the previous level, but the premise is that it must be superimposed after the previous few times. It is the first time that everyone has seen Ling Yunpo hit a critical hit right at the beginning, making the cultivators of the same level unable to block it. Everyone turned their eyes to Nzesu, and saw that senior sister was silent for a moment, and then said, Junior brother has already received the true teachings of the 7 killing sword technique. Then everyone suddenly realized, Oh, I understand, it turns out to be the true teachings of swordsmanship. I don't believe you. Ling Yunpo was only worshipped after Su Jian went into seclusion. What true swordsmanship could Su Jian teach him? And why can't senior sister know it but junior brother knows it? Facing the questioning eyes of everyone, Nzesu was silent again for a long time, and forcefully explained, in fact, I can do it, but I have never used it. Everyone nodded when they heard it. This is getting more and more outrageous. The 7 killing sword technique is famous for its speed. If it is combined with the advantages of force and heavy power, it is simply unbeatable in the same level. You, Nzesu, have been in Shushan for so many years, and you actually said that you have never used it. That's true. Ling Yunpo said seriously. As Master Yuzheng forbade the two to reveal information about Bai Yuzheng at this time, Ling Yunpo naturally couldn't say it openly. This was his secret gain after passing the trial in Mount Fuju. He could only laugh and said, Sister has actually already mastered the true essence of the 7 kill sword technique. It's just that because we usually practice with fellow disciples, it's not convenient to use heavy hands, so she has never used it everyone. So it's because we are too new, right? If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Mundo Fanfic Novelers, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelers. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 247. Supreme Sunday and Moon Primordial Scripture. The time was advanced to the last level of the Fuchu Mountain trial. After the 38th death, Ling Yunpo was resurrected again. His breath was slightly disordered. However, the Taoist-dressed Sun Sword Master had a more and more disappointed look on his face, and finally couldn't help but shouted, What's going on? Why is your swordsmanship so poor? Not to mention that you're born with sword bones. Even if you take a full-level casual cultivator, it won't be so inferior. Ling Yunpo almost vomited blood, but he looked resolute and unyielding, saying, I'm not good at learning, let the seniors comment. But I can't be insulted by the teachings of my master. The Sun Sword Master really looked down on him and said directly, What kind of shitty swordsmanship is your master? Ridiculous, show me. Ling Yunpo was silent for a moment, then pretended to hesitate and struggle, and finally said, Excuse me for showing off. He demonstrated all the sword techniques of the 7 killing swordsmanship, and the Sun Sword Master covered his face and sighed. The swordsmanship is a bit interesting, but in your hands, there are too many mistakes and flaws. If I'm not mistaken, this sword technique should be created by a master, and your master is a very arrogant person, so every move and every style in this sword technique is imprinted with his strong personal characteristics. What a pity. This sword technique can be called a unique one in his hands. but the more it fits with him, the more difficult it is to use in the hands of others. And with your awkward sword technique, I guess your master didn't give you any guidance after passing on the sword technique. Ling Yunpo. If the other party was not just a projection, he would be in tears at this moment, and shouted 3 times, "Senior has a keen eye, and the junior is convinced." That shitty Master Sujian, since I became his disciple, has never fulfilled the responsibility of a master. Seeing his angry expression, as if he was angry but not daring to speak, the Sun Sword Master thought he could not refute and sneered. If you were born in my time, how many sword immortals would be eager to accept you as a disciple? Why are you now worshipping under such a person? Forget it. I know you were a person who respects teachers and respects morality, so I won't say more about it. Watch carefully, this is how swordsmanship should be used. He raised the Sun's Hinmali sword and used every move that Ling Yunpo had just used, all in the same way. Ling Yunpo watched carefully and saw that the moves were exactly the same, but for some reason, when used by the Sun Sword Master, there was a kind of extremely strong and fierce terrifying feeling that could not be resisted by Peimo. Do you understand? The Sun Sword Master stopped his sword moves and turned around to ask. I understand. Ling Yunpo said truthfully, but I don't understand it completely. How stupid. Sun Sword Master scolded disdainfully, you were the most stupid disciple of my sect in the past, and you understood it after watching it 3 times. He used the 7 killing sword technique again, and Ling Yunpo watched it attentively. Finally, he confirmed that it was not a problem of sword techniques at all, but the key flow path of the opponent when flying the sword. It was roughly similar to the official Tisan Hunyuan's Hila of Shushan, but the details were much more exquisite. Excuse me, Senior, is the key flow path of your sword flying from Tisan Hunyuan's Hila? Ling Yunpo asked tentatively. The great record of the great mixed origin. The Sun Sword Master said in a strange tone, that is a crude and simplified practice for outer disciples. You were a person born with sword bones, why do you practice that? As soon as he finished speaking, he immediately sneered as if he had misunderstood something. So that's how it is. It's really a good master with insights like torches. Listen carefully, throw that useless record behind your mind. I will now teach you the true meaning of swordsmanship, the great Sunday and Moon Mixed Origin Sutra. He danced with the sun sword, and suddenly sang loudly, his voice clear and loud. Sword bones, listen to my true words. Kaiban Kung Kanlei, hard and soft cooperate, the 4 are wrapped together, it is called the key. 2, 4, 3, 5, 1, the essence of heaven and earth. After sending Lin Yulanzan and others away, Ling Yunpo unconsciously recalled the scene in the trial of Fuchu Mounting, and couldn't help but sigh in his heart. After learning the Great Sunday and Moon Mixed Origin Sutra, his swordsmanship skills have made more than a leap forward. From being unable to fight back against the Sun Sword Master at the beginning to being able to barely withstand the attack of the Sun Sword, it only took a day and a night. It's just that I really don't know whether the Shushan high-level officials cherish the true meaning of this sword art and deliberately concealed it, or from ancient times to the present, this true meaning has indeed disappeared in the long river of history for some reason, leaving only the castrated version of Tisan Hunyuan's Hila. No matter which situation it is regrettable. Senior sister. He turned to ask Nzesu, aren't you curious about my swordsmanship? Nzesu blinked and said, why should you be curious? Isn't this the true teaching of the 7 killing swordsmanship of our King Luo Peak? Ling Yunpo was slightly stunned when he heard this, and then laughed and said, indeed, it was me who forgot about this. Since it is the true teaching of the 7 killing swordsmanship, then it is okay for me to read the mental method to you again, right? He took the hand of the senior sister and walked towards the pavilion by the stream in that back mountain. Nzesu did not struggle, but just let him hold her hand with a smile. Sitting down by the pavilion, Ling Yunpo recited the Tisan Sunday and Moon Hunyuan Sutra in its entirety. Is this what you gained from the Baiyuzheng trial? Nzesu asked in shock. With her eyesight, of course, she immediately noticed that the general outline of this sword-controlling mental method and the Tisan Hunyuan's Hila of Shushan seemed to have the same source, but the rank was unknown. What's more interesting is that since the source is close or even the same, outsiders cannot see that this is a different sword-controlling mental method, but will only think that the Tisan Hunyuan's Hila has been cultivated to an extremely exquisite level. What do you think, senior sister? Ling Yunpo said with a smile, is this 7 killing sword art true biography powerful? Nzesu pondered for a while, and said seriously, junior brother, this true biography is too sensitive, and it must not be passed on to others. Senior sister, I know. Ling Yunpo said solemnly.
To San Yuan's blood is the outline of the orthodox sword-controlling mental method that has been passed down from generation to generation in Shushan for nearly 10,000 years. If another version suddenly emerges, it is really hard to predict what attitude the Shushan high level will take. In the best case, they will acquiesce, turn a blind eye, and allow this mental method to spread freely among Shushan disciples. In the worst case, they will take an attitude against heresy, prohibit its circulation, and crack down on it, and then secretly study it in private. Considering their fear and isolation of King Luo Peak, it is not impossible. In the final analysis, King Luo Peak is too weak, implicated by Sujian, and stained with heresy, and too sensitive. If Qiu Cheng Tian were in Kunlin, no matter when he took it out, he would be rewarded by Ziwei Master in the first place, and there would be no worries at all. Speaking of this, Ling Yunbo thought of the matter of Shen Xiaolei again. You can't be impatient to talk about love with your senior sister. After all, your senior sister is so thin-skinned that she will explode if you tease her too much. Right now, I should take some time to go back to Kunlun and learn the Divine Thunder, and also see how junior sisters Yu is doing. Chapter 248. Junior Sisters Yu is forced to marry. Kunlin, Jinlan Cave. Zhu Yingyan stood up from the stone bed and slightly gathered her wrinkled Taoist robe. Finally, the marrow cleansing was completed and she entered the Wathu period. She was a little proud and wanted to show off to her senior brother, I can still catch up without the master's special treatment for you. But then she thought that whether it was the King Jing Yuan Qi pill that blunted the turbid air or the bodybuilding secret technique that had a miraculous effect on the marrow cleansing, they were all related to her senior brother, so she quickly gave up the idea. Forget it, let's tell good news to the great-grandfather first. Qiu Cheng Tian was teleported to his own cave, and the invincible illusion of the mirror flower and water moon was cast. Just as he was about to go out, he suddenly received a flying sword letter from Zhu Cheng King, inviting him to the cave for a chat. Arriving at Zhu Cheng King's cave, Qiu Cheng Tian saw the former chief of the Foundation building realm, sitting on the stone bed at this time, his face still a little pale. Zhu Yingyan sat quietly on the stone bench next to him, with no waves in his eyes, and no expression could be seen. Brother. Qiu Cheng Tian bowed, and suddenly smiled, I forgot, I should call you Zhenrun now. Master gave me the Taoist name King Yang. Zhu Cheng King said with a smile, but you should continue to call me brother. Brother Zhu. Qiu Cheng Tian asked gently, how is your health recently? I need to recuperate for a few more years. Zhu Cheng King coughed a few times. To survive the heavenly tribulation, the source of essence was too much. It's good if I can survive it. Qiu Cheng Tian smiled. Several years of spring and autumn, compared with the lifespan of the golden elixir, is like a snap of the fingers. At this point, Zhu Cheng King also smiled. Among the three major hurdles in cultivation, the most difficult is to form the elixir. Of course, this sentence does not mean that the transformation of the infant and the ascension to immortality are not difficult, but it means that the golden elixir heavenly tribulation kills the most cultivators, and only 1 out of 100 survives. As the chief of Kunlun Tai King sect, the leader of the righteous path, and the first person below the golden core, Zhu Cheng King has the support of the Tian and Zhu family behind him. Whether it is the skills or the magic tools, it is so difficult for ordinary cultivators to survive the heavenly tribulation. Some cultivators call it a walk in front of the gates of hell, which is not an empty talk. In short, it is still the same sentence. It is good to survive. Qiu Cheng Tian and Zhu Cheng King chatted for a few words, but noticed that Zhu Yingyan next to him seemed to be a little worried. There was no smile on her face. Qiu Cheng Tian secretly paid attention, and not long after, he heard Zhu Cheng King pointing at Zhu Yingyan and said, my phoenix girl has also completed the marrow cleansing today and entered the Wathu stage. Oh? Qiu Cheng Tian's eyes lit up, and he congratulated with a smile, you are worthy at being my junior sister, and your 7 Orifice exquisite heart is well deserved. How can it compare to the clear heart of Tao? Zhu Yingyan couldn't help but say out loud. The tone of sarcasm was so strong that Qiu Cheng Tian was slightly startled. Zhu Cheng King scolded in a low voice. Yilin. So Zhu Yingyan turned his head away and stopped talking. Ahem. Zhu Cheng King said seriously, Junior brother Qiu, you and Yinlan's Taoist partner marriage has been set a long time ago. The Zhu family asked the day before yesterday if they could pick an auspicious day. Qiu Cheng Tian. No wonder junior sister seemed to be angry. Who can feel good when being forced to marry by the family?
Moreover, the family forced marriage here is almost fundamentally different from the soft parents forced marriage in the modern society before he traveled through time. In modern society, parents raise children purely for spending for love. When children grow up, they can completely ignore their parents' opinions and spend as much time as they want. This is completely unimaginable in the world here. The Immortal Cultivation families here have very strong personal control over every family cultivator who has not reached the Jinnan realm. If Zhu Yingyan says today that he does not want to get married, he will be counterattacked by the Tian Zhu family immediately without waiting until tomorrow. Not only will the supply of cultivation resources be completely cut off, but the elders in the sect will also come to persuade them, and even the head of Ziwi will be dispatched. In this case, if they still insist on going their own way, they will most likely die socially, which is even worse than the status of King Luo Peak in Shushan. The only way to break the deadlock is to form a golden elixir. Any cultivator on Kunlun who forms a golden elixir will have the qualifications to go outside and establish a sect and a branch of Kunlun. This was the case with Chonghe's Henren who left with the Shengxiao Leifa. For that Tian Zhu family, the golden elixir cultivators have the power to intervene in family affairs and belong to the ruling class in the family. Naturally, they will not worry about being forced into marriage by anyone. However, it seems that it was precisely because of this worry that the Tian Zhu family chose to arrange Zhu Cheng King to urge Zhu Yingyan to get married immediately when she had just finished her marrow washing and entered the Watfu stage, and they were unwilling to wait even a year. Qiu Cheng Time knew very well how arrogant Sister Zhu was. Now that the Zhu family of Tianan is so wary of her and is forcing her to marry him, and using her as a bargaining chip to win over Qiu Cheng Tian, how can she let it go? Ahem. Qiu Cheng Time cleared his throat and was about to say something, when he suddenly saw Zhu Cheng King staring at him with sharp eyes. So he knew that the Zhu family of Tianan was very serious this time. Any excuses he made rashly would be regarded as prevarication by the other party. Forget it, I have taken their Jade Dragon Fairy Sword and cultivation resources, and I have promised the head of Ziwi early in the morning. Is there any reason to delay it any longer? Senior Brother Zhu. Qiu Cheng Time said with a smile, I don't have any elders in my family, so this matter is up to the master. Good. Zhu Cheng King was delighted, clapping his hands and laughing, that's the best. I'll report to the master and my family and let them know. Junior brother, you and Yinglin stay here for a while. He went out in a hurry regardless of his weak body. So only Qiu Cheng Tian, who looked helpless, and Zhu Yinglian, whose face was full of I'm unhappy, were left. Junior sister, Qiu Cheng Tian just opened his mouth and saw Zhu Yinglian whispering, Senior brother, do you want me to call you husband? Well, that's not necessary. Qiu Cheng Tian said awkwardly, this, I understand. Zhu Yinglian stood up and said lightly, I feel a little unwell, so I'll leave first. As her white clothes fluttered, she had already left gracefully, leaving Qiu Cheng Tian alone in the cave with a bitter smile. Originally, I thought that junior sister had some interest in me, but the Tian Zhu family came to mess things up, and now I can't be sure. Alas, why is Zhu family so anxious? Could it be that you are worried that junior sister will choose to sacrifice her path to quickly form a golden elixir in order to escape marriage? Junior sister has such a proud personality. If she doesn't practice for 200 years to transform the Purple Mansion into the Jade Mansion, how could you be willing to hastily form a golden elixir and not even get a third-grade golden elixir? It's really overthinking. After thinking about it, Qiu Cheng Time could only sigh, get up and go out. What are you going to do? Kumlin Jing suddenly asked. Why? Qiu Cheng Time said with a chuckle, you are still thinking about asking me to practice dual cultivation with her, so as to stimulate the Phoenix bloodline to engrave it for you, right? That's not what I meant. Kumlin Jing seemed a little hesitant, I just think, junior sister Zhu, she is also very pitiful. What's the matter? Qiu Cheng Time frowned and said, why call her junior sister Zhu? She is my junior sister. Ah Jing, you have nothing to do with her. Kumlin Jing. Okay. She was completely annoyed, just keep fooling around. When you try to get the booty in stone and your identity is exposed, she will come to kill you with the Yujie sword when she finds out the truth. It has nothing to do with me. Chapter 249. The process was flawed, but the result was good. Soon, the news that Qiu Cheng Tian, the chief of the foundation building realm of Kunlun this generation, was going to marry his junior sister Zhu Yinglian, spread like wildfire in Tai King sect. Of course, the description of spreading like wildfire is not accurate enough.
Qiu Changtian probably spread the news in advance from the Zhu family of Tianan, so that everyone would know that Qiu Changtian, who has a clear mind and a promising future, has become the son-in-law of my Zhu family of Tianan. For a time, whether it was the junior brothers and sisters they knew, or the senior sisters and brothers they didn't know, and even some elders and real people, all sent gifts. According to the rules, the gift should be sent to the man's home. However, Qiu Changtian had no elders, and the head of Ziwei didn't like red tape, so everyone sent them all to his cave. What about flying swords and magic weapons of the 7th, 8th and 9th levels, as well as various spiritual herbs and elixirs? Even if Qiu Changtian never lacked money, this time he also got a little rich. Well, forget about the flying swords and magic weapons with distinctive features, and the spiritual herbs and elixirs that can't be recognized, and they will all be sent to support Wei Dongliu later. Using the resources of the Orthodox Kunlun to support the evil sect, Kunlun Miram Kingping Sword was speechless. What do you know? This is called reasonable deployment under emergency conditions. Qiu Changtian was too lazy to explain, and just perfunctorily said in an emergency, we must make decisions based on our own situation. Qiu Changtian received all kinds of gifts, while Zhu Yingyang made all kinds of visits. The female elders of the Zhu family in Tianan, the senior and junior sisters of the Kunlun Tai King sect, whether they were familiar with each other, had met before, or had never met before, all came to visit and make friends. Now anyone with a discerning eye can see that Qiu Changtian, as a person with a clear mind of Taoism, plus the chief of the foundation building realm, plus the support of the resources of the Zhu family in Tianan, is destined to be very successful in the future, and his future is limitless. As for Zhu Yinlian, who became a Taoist partner with Qiu Changtian, he naturally followed suit. If we don't make friends now, when will we wait? One day, Qiu Changtian was sitting in the cave, chatting and laughing with his fellow apprentices, when he heard his 5th apprentice Changqin jokingly say, everyone says that it is difficult to cultivate the Tao, and the difficulty lies in wealth, companions, armor, and land. Now that the eldest brother has all 4, I really envy the younger brothers. When everyone thought that this was indeed the case, they all began to compliment him. For wealth, there are the resources of the Tianan Zhu family. For companions, there is the support and mutual assistance of Sister Zhu, a proud daughter of heaven. For Dharma, there is the immortal secret method of 9 heavens pure land realm true words. For land, there is the protection of Kunlun Tai King sect, it is simply the cultivation conditions that all the cultivators in the world dream of. Qiu Changtian was about to be humble, when Zhu Yingyang suddenly rushed in aggressively. Her bright eyes were slightly glaring, her pretty face was frosty, and her lips were tightly pursed, as if her anger value had reached a certain limit. Everyone could see that something was wrong, and immediately made excuses for various things and left in a hurry. Look at what you've done. Seeing that everyone else had left, Zhu Yingyang gritted her teeth and said, my cave entrance is blocked. There are no less than 30 visiting cards every day, wanting to discuss Taoism with me, and I don't even have time to rest. Junior sister, how can you blame me for this? Qiu Changtian said innocently, it's obviously you who are popular in the sect. Before he finished speaking, he saw Zhu Yingyang's eyes turned cold, as if he was looking at a stink bug that was extremely scum. Well, it's indeed my fault. Who told me to be so brilliant that you're just about to become my Taoist partner, but you are scrambled to curry favor with so many fellow disciples, and you were overwhelmed. In this case, I'm indeed to blame for this matter. Take me out. Zhu Yingyang said directly. Ah? Qiu Changtian asked in surprise. I said, let you take me out in the name of traveling, so that I have a reason not to receive those guests. Zhu Yingyang said coldly with patience. Oh. Okay. Qiu Changtian immediately came to his senses. I thought it was the junior sister who took the initiative to ask for a date. Thinking carefully, there is no such thing as dating in this world of cultivating immortals. Not to mention that it was a girl who took the initiative to propose, it's better to dream. The two got up and left the cave, flying up on the sword. The jade dragon sword was shining brightly, the flames of the tail of the Yu-Jie sword were blazing, the male cultivator was handsome and tall, and the female cultivator was cold and elegant, and soon attracted the attention of all the cultivators around Jinling. What a pair of immortal lovers! Suddenly a female cultivator exclaimed. This made many people feel the same, so everyone praised from the bottom of their hearts, saying that Qiu Changtian and Zhu Yingyang were simply a match made in heaven, and there would never be a pair as perfect as them in the world. Flying the sword out of the range of Jinling, unknowingly, they arrived at the extreme west, which was where Zhu Yingyang practiced the great bright fire before. Junior sister, do you want to try it? Kyo Chang's time said with a smile, from the washing marrow stage to the transformation palace stage, the truth will be condensed into true essence, which will greatly increase the power of Taoism. Zhu Yingyan thought it was nothing to do, so she nodded silently. She chanted the spell floating in the 9 mornings, shining in the sky, and countless flames suddenly burst out from her mouth and nose, sweeping and whistling towards the rock wall in front of her, instantly burning away all the rocks within 100 feet. This, Zhu Yingyan was also a little surprised. Who would have thought that after rising to the transformation palace stage, the great light fire would be so powerful? She was secretly happy in her heart, but asked reservedly, "How is it? How does it compare to my senior brother's thunder method?" "Very good." Kyo Chang's time said truthfully, "It's not as powerful as the thunder method, but its range is far better. In my opinion, it is a powerful Taoist method of the same level as the 5 thunders method." "Is that so?" Zhu Yingyan nodded lightly, but she was extremely happy in her heart, and asked again, "I wonder if my senior brother has heard about something recently." "What is it?" "A senior left a Taoist tradition in Yangzhou, and his descendants discovered a certain immortal ruins in Tianmun Mountain, so they returned to the sect to report it." Zhu Yingyan said slowly, "It is said that the discipline hall attaches great importance to it and has sent 3 seniors to confirm it." Kyo Chang's time smiled slightly in his heart. It turned out that Baiyujing was discovered. In this way, the Shengxiao Thunder method will soon be sent to the Kunlun Sutra Pavilion with the return of the old Taoist priest, and he can learn it later. "Brother." Zhu Yingyan looked at the Kongling Mountains in the distance and said slowly, "Life is fleeting, like a white horse passing by in the blink of an eye. Even if you become a cultivator and prolong your life, it is actually not that long. When I was young and had not yet studied Taoism in Kunlun, I only liked to read at home and read countless stories of unfulfilled ambitions and regrets in life. So I secretly vowed that I would never leave any regrets in this life. Even if I failed to ascend to heaven and my lifespan is limited, at least I have tried my best. So the reason why junior sister is so strong is just because life is short and she doesn't want to live a mediocre life." Kyo Chang's time said with a smile, "So she strives to do her best in all aspects." "That's right." Zhu Yingyan nodded and said, "Even if I choose a Taoist partner, it is no exception." "Huh?" Kyo Chang's time looked at her in surprise. Of course, he instantly understood what junior sister meant. "Even if I choose a Taoist partner, I don't want to wrong myself and choose someone I am not satisfied with." "But..." Zhu Yingyan looked at the sky above the Kongling Mountains and whispered, "Although I have always been following senior brother's footsteps, I often get angry with senior brother because I can't get what I want, but I don't hate senior brother." Kyo Chang's Hyan. "Is this considered a confession? I'm not so arrogant as to think that my senior brother is not worthy of me." Zhu Yingyan continued in a low voice, with a rare expression of helplessness and sadness on her cold and delicate face, "It's just that I don't want this marriage to be arranged by the family from beginning to end. At least give me some room to choose to express my opinion. In life, there are always many things that cannot be done." Kyo Chang's Hyan also sighed. "Indeed." Zhu Yingyan nodded and said, "Even if I don't want to leave any regrets, it's difficult to do it." She turned her head away, not letting Kyo Chang's time see the expression on her face, paused for a moment and said, "It's just, occasionally thinking about it at night, although the process is flawed, at least the result is barely okay." "What do you mean?" Kyo Chang's time didn't understand for a moment. HMPH. Zhu Yingyan turned around, with a hint of smile in her tone. "Let me use this question as a response to the moon in the sky and the moon in the water to test your comprehension, brother." After saying that, she spread out her white robe sleeves, pulled out the fiery red Yu-Jie sword, and flew away gracefully. Chapter 250. Escape from marriage. Half a month later. Kunlun Tianzhu, Yaxu Palace Sutra Pavilion. This is the Shengxiao Thunder method that Zhendoa sent back. Elder Zhu, who was guarding the Sutra Pavilion, handed the scripture to Zhu Cheng King and said with a smile, "You are lucky. You didn't do anything, and they sent the Thunder method back." Kyo Chang's time smiled but said nothing. "What did you do?" "You killed a mountain of little monsters to rescue that person, okay? I heard that Tianmu Mountain where Zhendoa is located contains the secret realm of the ancient Baiyujing." Elder Zhu remembered something and said, "The trial content is of great benefit to the Sword Immortal. The 3 Orthodox sects have discussed and will open it once a month every year in the future. If you have free time, you can also find your master to sign up next month. Thank you for the reminder, senior." Kyo Chang's time said with a smile, thinking that I actually cleared the level a long time ago. Don't rush into practicing thunder magic. Elders Yu warned again, you're going to get married tomorrow, so you should rest and recuperate today. Qiu Changtai nodded in agreement, but he was filled with emotion. In this world, it usually takes half a year from engagement to marriage. The reason why the Zhu family only took half a month to complete everything, as if forcing the two to get married, was clearly because they were worried that the longer the night, the more dreams they would have. Oh, they knew Zhu Yingyan's stubborn temper too well, and they were afraid that if they delayed any further, the girl would really do something stupid and ruin the engagement. Of course, it was not wrong to say so. Because Zhu Yingyan had said before, even if I choose a Taoist partner, I don't want to leave any regrets. If the Zhu family really picked a Taoist partner that she was not satisfied with, she would probably run away from the marriage. I can only say that she was lucky to have met me. No, I'm going to vomit. Kumlan Mira suddenly said. Are you pregnant? Qiu Changtai asked in surprise. No, do you think it's lucky or unfortunate for her to meet you? Don't you have any idea in your mind? Kumlan Mira criticized him unceremoniously. To put it bluntly, isn't this a marriage fraud? How is this a marriage fraud? Qiu Changtai said in surprise, did I take the initiative to deceive this marriage? Didn't the Zhu family of Tianan and the head of Ziwei discuss it and inform me directly? If I still want to stay in Kumlin, there is no room for maneuver. Kumlan Mira was silent for a moment, and whispered. Then, even if you have no choice, isn't it also a marriage fraud? I think the word cheat is indeed wrong. King Ping Sword interrupted and said, considering that the Swordmaster did not use his real name to marry junior sister Zhu, I think it can be defined as a fake marriage. Not bad. Qiu Changtai said with satisfaction, my King Ping is still sensible, much better than a broken mirror who empathizes at every turn. Kumlan Mira stopped talking. It's not that it can't refute, but because it suddenly realized that no matter how much it said at this time, it would be useless. Doesn't this person understand? No, he is pretending to be stupid. How can you wake up someone who is pretending to be asleep? Qiu Changtai said goodbye to Elders Yu, and then flew to visit Zhu Changking. The newly promoted King Yang Xinren had just sent off a group of old friends who came to visit and congratulate him. Seeing Qiu Changtai flying from a distance, he immediately took off the fake smile on his face, showing an anxious expression, and sighed. I told the tribe the day before yesterday to keep all the rituals as simple and light as possible, but for some reason the tribe leader changed his mind a few days ago and insisted on a grand ceremony and a banquet for the guests. Maybe he just wants it to be more lively. Qiu Changtai said casually. The clan wants to make a name for itself with you. True Man King Yang said in annoyance, the Immortal Cultivation family has always spoken with excellent cultivation seeds. When should we care about these false names? I think the clan leader thinks that there are no other outstanding descendants except Lin Lin in the past 10 years, so he wants to use this wedding to revive his reputation. I'm worried about two things. One is that the clan's big fanfare can only deceive the mediocre masses, but cannot deceive knowledgeable people, and in the end it will expose its own shortcomings. The second is that junior brother Qiu, you're already on the wanted list of the demon sect. You should have been dormant and unknown, but now the clan is messing with you like this, alas. He became more and more angry as he spoke, and in the end he shook his sleeves vigorously, wishing he could rush to the clan leader and scold him a few words. Qiu Changtai didn't care, because he hit the synchronization value set by the invincible enemy to brush. It's just that recently, because he couldn't go out for training, he could only talk about the mystery with people in the faction, and the efficiency of brushing the synchronization value is obviously not as good as usual. Zhu Changking said that this was just a false reputation, but he didn't know that what Qiu Changtai needed at this time was precisely these seemingly useless false reputations. If the wedding could be held with great fanfare and Qiu Changtai's glorious resume could be publicized everywhere, wouldn't it be possible to harvest a large wave of synchronization points? However, considering what his junior sister said that day, he thought about it and muttered to Master King Yang. The wedding day soon arrived. The ceremony for cultivators to become Taoist couples can be grand, simple or even non-existent, and most of the time it depends on the cultivator's own wishes. For a super immortal cultivation family like the Tianan Zhu family, and a well-known phoenix fairy like Zhu Yinlian, it is definitely impossible not to hold it. As for the specific details of the ceremony, it is very different from a folk wedding. There is no link such as picking up the bride and carrying the sedan chair. The Immortal Cultivation family still has to pay attention to style. If it is too festive and lively, it will be no different from the ordinary people, but it will lower its status. Overall, there are actually two links: family sacrifices and banquets for guests. The clan sacrifice is the core ritual, which includes a series of tedious steps such as informing the ancestors, meeting the elders, and listing the family tree. The purpose is to allow the male and female relatives to quickly get to know each other and establish corresponding personal connections. Dealu, this love refers not only to the partner himself, but also to the partner's personal resources. As for the banquet for guests, it is an optional link. After all, many monks are natural dead houses, and they can't find any friends they know, so there are no guests to be hosted. Zhu Yingyan sat in the boudoir, and several maids were helping her to dress up. After the makeup was completed, the maids bowed and left the room, waiting for the groom to complete the clan sacrifice, and then pick up the bride to entertain the guests outside. Zhu Yingyan sat in front of the dressing table in a daze, feeling very depressed. She was born strong, but now she was forced into marriage by the clan, which really made her feel unhappy. In this way, what is the difference between a dignified phoenix fairy and an ordinary woman who follows her father before marriage? She kept thinking about it in self-pity, and couldn't help but lie on the table, half burying her face in her arms. If it weren't for the fact that the groom was my senior brother, I would. Just as she was thinking about it, she suddenly heard the sound of the door being pushed open outside. Zhu Yingyan tilted her head slightly and saw Qiu Changtian, dressed in a formal suit, entering the room with a smile on his face. "Why are you here?" she said subconsciously, and then realized that her posture at this time was quite casual and unrestrained. She immediately straightened her chest and back and sat upright, revealing her beautiful figure, and said reservedly, "Are all the sacrificial links over?" "It hasn't started yet." Qiu Changtian pulled a chair and sat down. "I just arrived and came to see you." "Senior brother, are you here to see my joke?" Zhu Yingyan sighed. "What do you mean?" Qiu Changtian asked in surprise. "Knowing that I don't want to accept the forced arrangement of the clan, you must be in a bad mood at this time, and just come to see my frustrated face, right?" Zhu Yingyan said sullenly. "Junior sister, in your heart, am I the kind of person who enjoys bullying you?" Qiu Changtian asked with a smile. Zhu Yingyan turned her head away, thinking to herself, "How many times have you deliberately angered me before?" So she simply kept silent and ignored him. As a result, her slender hand was suddenly grabbed by someone. She cried out in a low voice, and saw Qiu Changtian leaning his head over and asking seriously, "Junior sister, it's not that you don't want to be my Taoist partner, but you don't want to be forced by the family to be my Taoist partner, right?" "Yeah." She was a little shy, dodging Qiu Changtian's gaze, and still said, "Not bad. I didn't expect you to be able to solve the test I gave you. What's so unsolvable about this?" Qiu Changtian complained casually, and seeing that Zhu Yingyan was about to get angry again, he quickly got back to the point and smiled, "Junior sister, since you don't want to have any regrets, what for? Let's run away from the marriage." Qiu Changtian said solemnly. "Ah?" Before Zhu Yingyan could react, Qiu Changtian grabbed her hand and pulled her up, walking towards the door. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.